Oddities, late night movies with Ben, Rob, and Zack. This is a podcast about cinematic oddities where we discuss any media that is too bizarre, normal, or off-kilter for contemporary audiences. Occasionally these projects gel, while sometimes they crash hard into the realm of obscurity. Join us as we delve into the cult classic swamp. I'm Zack.
I'm Ben.
And I know when Branzino's fresh, and that was not fresh. One of the moments from this movie that made me chuckle a little bit, but there's another moment that I didn't really want to turn into my intro. I actually wanted to say how kind of transcendent, there's a certain line of dialogue in the second movie that we're discussing today, Spider-Man 2, Home 2, whatever it's called. But there's a moment when the kids have to go to the opera to stay indoors while the elemental attack is going to happen right at the middle of the movie. And Martin Starr, as the teacher, as the chaperone, he says something like, oh, it'll be fun, we're going to the opera. All the kids are like, oh, I don't want to go to the opera. What, Ned or whatever is trying to get everybody to go. And once they all kind of agree or, give into the whims of the teacher says something like, I hope you're all excited for the next 4 hours of your life. And they all go, 4 hours? I need to start putting that in front of our episode, Zach. Like the original, the Sam Raimi trilogy. I wish I knew about this quote 2 weeks ago, because I would have put that as the cold open of the episode, The teacher going, everybody look forward to the next 4 hours of your life. So I'm going to have to cut that clip out and save it somewhere special, because I know it's going to be of great use to Cinemodities later on.
We're going to the opera.
The opera.
Don't look at me.
What happened to the carnival?
Oh, this is upgrade living, guys. Come on. The tour company just gave us these tickets for free. Do you have any idea how much opera tickets cost?
No, because none of us have ever wanted to go to the opera. Ever.
Well, I think this is going to be culturally enriching for us.
Thank you, Ned. Everyone, this is going to be maybe the best 4 hours of our whole trip.
4 hours? Guys, I think this is going to be really fun. Seriously.
The Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah, there we go. We have many episodes in the can that that quote will lend itself well towards. But we are here to continue on with our Spider-Man series. We don't know what we're calling it yet, but that'll come up in a minute, of course. We are now discussing the third iteration of Spider-Man movies, directed by John Watts, of course starring Tom Holland in the titular character, and the ones that finally enter the MCU. So I'm not really looking forward to discussing these movies. So let's do something else first. Let's talk about what we're going to name this series. So I think we've been recording these out of order, but I think we all kind of stand. I want it to be Spider-Man's Giving. I think, Ben, you were leaning more towards the Spectacular Spider Month. And Zach, I don't remember which one you were saying. Was there one you had your chips on?
Oh God, I think it's the Podchowski Casters. I think that's what I want to call. I'm sorry, spoiler alert. That's next month's series.
Oh God. So we have a new suggestion, because 2 weeks ago when we released our Sam Raimi trilogy episode, we said, I think at the end of that episode, so somebody actually had to make it to the end of the episode, or close to the end of it. We said, hey, let's see what our fans think. If anybody wants to hit us up and has an idea for this series name, feel free to throw it at us. And we received one through Reddit from none other than our good friend Maximo. Of course, Maximo is going to give us a little idea for the name of the series. And so this is what it is. It's fairly long. So I'm just going to say it outright, and then we can discuss it. See if it should fit into the fourth possibility for this series name. Here we go. His idea for the series title is Spider Month, Into the Cinemodities Restaurant, 3, No Way Home, Amazing. So just to reiterate, it is Spider Month, Into the Cinemodities Restaurant, 3, No Way Home, Amazing. And there are 4 colons in that title. So what do you guys think? Any initial thoughts? Because when I first read it, I kind of fell in love with it.
It's like a Tim and Eric sketch title almost.
Yes. Ben, it reminded me a lot of the one that you also were saying. What was it? Spider-Man. He's like a spider, but a man. What was the other one you were thinking of, Ben?
He's like a spider, but he's a man.
Okay,
yeah,
so got some layers to it. I don't know. What do you think, Ben? What do you think about this amalgamation of tons of different things?
Into the Cinemodities Restaurant, No Way Home. That's great. Since that's what the Cinemodities Restaurant is. The amazing part at the end of it, I would not leave it at the end of it. I would put it somewhere else or take it out.
Okay.
So it was See, we could even go with Amazing Spider Month into the Cinemodities restaurant, No Way Home.
I'm with you, Ben. I really like the idea of having, No Way Home or something involving never getting back home and the Cinemodities restaurant in the same statement or title or something like that. Because you're right, that's the whole shtick,
We could just go with what I was joking about. Was Spider-Man no way to get far enough from Homecoming?
Yes, exactly. So, okay, we'll take this into account. We'll put this all in the spreadsheet. Maybe this is going to get resolved in the final episode of the series at the end of November. If it doesn't, maybe it'll be a slight talking point when we get to the 4-year extravaganza. But kind of, guys, I was thinking about this as I was preparing for this episode and editing the others in this month that we've done so far. This might be the first series we have where everybody just gets their own name for it. Like, are we ever going to reach a conclusion? Like, is this going to be the first series where it's like, well, what's that? What's November of 2021? It's going to be like, well, it's all about Spider-Man, but what you call it, which is irrelevant to the series and the discussions, it changes based on which host you ask.
I want to hear you code that in the spreadsheet.
Oh, okay, so I just thought of a new one.
Oh, okay.
Spider-Man, it's like a series, but it doesn't have a name.
Okay. That's another wrench, Ben, adding something in this title of the series referring to how it has no title.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, we got plenty to think about, and we can mull this over as we go through these movies and maybe bring it up at the end. But this is the first time in this series that we're finally getting to Spider-Man movies that I have never seen before. And both Homecoming and Far From Home, yep, that's what it's called, I had to write that down, that I have been dreading these, specifically because they are part of the MCU. Now, I don't really think, that's my context is what I'm getting at. I know the MCU, never seen these movies, never really had interest to see these Spider-Man movies, because you get enough of the MCU from the major ones like, Infinity War, Endgame. I know what's going on. I'm sure you guys have both seen both of these movies, right? That you guys were prepared for this way more than I was. Ben, of course, I'm guessing you've seen them before just because they are Spider-Man movies. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I saw them in theaters.
Oh, okay. Right on. And Zach, I know you've seen them and you've talked to me about these because I think this should lead into some context that we haven't talked about in a while. Out of the three of us, Zach suffers from Stockholm Syndrome regarding the Marvel Cinematic Universe to this day. And I think also back when these movies were coming out. Is that right?
Rob, there's a major error in your statement.
Uh-oh.
We haven't talked about my Stockholm Syndrome in a while. That's like I might be the true, low-key thesis of this entire month is my Stockholm Syndrome with Marvel.
Oh, I guess that's true, but we've been focusing more on the...
I'm the Patty Hearst of Marvel.
Well, I think you're right by saying that you have Stockholm Syndrome relating to the Marvel movies, but now I don't think we've talked about specifically the Marvel Cinematic Universe in a while. But you're right that the undertones have been there in the previous two episodes. So I guess I gotta ask you guys, I mean, it's no surprise, right? I did not enjoy these movies, but I don't want to rehash those things again. I've discussed my distaste for superhero movies. I want to talk more about the MCU and my feelings on that in this episode. Of course, we'll get to Spider-Man stuff, but you guys seeing this in theaters, not just this, but also the Captain America Civil War first appearance of Tom Holland as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Was this something you guys, and Ben especially, being the fan of Spider-Man here, were you kind of jacked up for this when it was announced that he was going to be in the MCU? Because I remember that being huge news when that deal finally got struck.
I mean, definitely. Any chance to see Spider-Man on the big screen, I'm pretty happy with. And given that, all of the MCU has that, well, and Rob will definitely know what I'm talking about, but that joke structure that they have where they deliver the same joke over and over again, but with different words.
Yes.
I definitely was hopeful that this Spider-Man would be the quippy Spider-Man that I love, and not the Tobey Maguire crying all the time Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
But I also hoped that we would get a little bit nerdier version of Peter Parker, unlike the Andrew Garfield version.
Sure.
And so to be honest, I was hopeful that it would kind of right some of the wrongs of the past, and to a large degree, I think it did.
Okay, interesting. I'm glad you bring up the joke structure. I definitely want to talk about that with the Marvel-itis of these movies in general. Would you say that this did, though, for you, Ben? And also, Zach, I don't know how you want to break this down. I guess I'm looking just at character, not looking at any specific movie. Tom Holland as a Peter Parker, as a Spider-Man, did he right some of those wrongs? Did this work for you is this your Spider-Man, I guess, to answer the question we set up, 2 weeks ago at the start of this?
Short answer, no. Long answer, not really, but like I said, I was part of the hype train. I can still remember like all the issues with the rights thing, which to this day is still kind of fascinating with like Sony and Disney Marvel. But no, like I was excited. I just remember seeing like in that first trailer for Civil War that came out, I want to say around the time that like Batman v Superman was released in theaters, where like it ends with him like just like landing on like the roof of, at the time, of a car, and he's like, "Hey guys," and like the eyes like squint, and the entire internet just like lost their collective minds. I can still remember like being opening night for Civil War in the theater, and then like you have like the establishing shot and says Queens, and the like theater erupted. Because again, that it was something to get excited about. It was like one of the few times like toward like the like mid to late 2010s where like Marvel still did something that felt novel. And it was like, okay, cool. Like we've been like, God, when like the Avengers came out in 2012, it was so weird to have like a superhero movie take place, especially Marvel, in New York City, and not have Spider-Man there. It was such a jarring thing as a comic books fan, or at least of that lore. So the idea of having him there, I was like, okay, cool. Like it feels like he's being like integrated into this, something that's been long overdue.
Sure.
And then like when I watched Homecoming, I can still remember like, oh God, that was back. I think the bloom was kind of off the flower, so to speak, with Marvel at that time for me. Like going to a Marvel movie opening night was so much fun. I think I mentioned this in the Avengers Endgame experiment series. And that was the first time where like I realized, oh, opening night crowds can be like really bad, because like it was a bunch of teenagers and the entire theater reeked of pot. And it was like, okay, for like a 7 p.m. showing on a Thursday, I guess everyone's getting high at 6 p.m. And then like by the time Far From Home came out, it was like, this is after Avengers Endgame. And I didn't see it as like a Marvel fan. Like I'm a fan of Spider-Man. Like I want to see a new Spider-Man movie. Yeah. And then like all it is just him playing like, and we'll talk about this a lot, it's just like baby Iron Man, which Tom Holland's even said in interviews. He's like, yeah, I don't really like the character of Spider-Man. Like I like the idea of playing like Iron Man 2.0. And I'm like, well, I guess you're getting what you want then, for better or worse. But no, I think the last 30 minutes of Homecoming are kind of fun. It actually feels like a real Spider-Man story in the last 30 minutes. But no, I in all honesty, if I could flush Far From Home like down the toilet, I would. Like I think that it's not that like it's a bad, like objectively bad movie. It's just like it's a bowel movement. Like I want it to pass. It's a natural thing, and I want to dispose of it like in tow, and that's kind of what it is. It's I said I think Tom Holland's doing. We'll get into this a lot more, so I don't want to jump the gun. But Tom Holland is fine. He's not Peter Parker. He's a 2010s version of a John Hughes character, which is their intent. They've said that numerous times.
Oh God, the John Hughes and early Cameron Crowe inspiration on these movies. I was near vomiting, I think.
It's one of the problem though, Rob, is that the people watching these movies do not know what John Hughes and they don't even know what the word Cameron Crowe means. They think it's like a weird combination of Jimmy C and Russell Crowe.
Sure. yeah, there you go. Did you see on Skype that Ben raised his hand and sent us a chat? I've never seen that before, but that just happened. So we gotta wait for Ben to come back in a little bit. But I'm glad you bring this up, Zach. And this is kind of how I want to frame it for Ben as well, with him being the big fan of Spider-Man. I'm glad you brought it up in the sense of the first appearance, I should say, in Civil War, and the feeling of Spider-Man and Peter Parker as a character just from two scenes, basically. It's the introduction scene where he's Peter Parker, and then it's the airport hangar battle where he's Spider-Man and he's fighting against. Jesus, I watched it earlier today and I can't remember Vulture and Silver Arm. That's
Jake Gyllenhaal.
So I think that there was a big time lapse where people saw Peter Parker and Spider-Man in Civil War and got really, really excited for Homecoming and the standalone movies, which they should, because I remember a lot of people after that, Civil War came out, they were saying it's like this, they finally got Peter Parker and Spider-Man right, that type of thing. And then maybe that opinion changed. But Ben, if you are back, because I think I heard you making some noise, What did you think from that starting point in Civil War, having this new Spider-Man? Was it your Spider-Man in those two scenes? Did you like him, hate him? Any thoughts?
I definitely liked the kind of quippy interactions where he was like talking to people during the fight, and it's even brought up that like he's talking too much.
That's the best moment, I think, when Anthony Mackie says something like, I don't know if you've been in a lot of fights before, but there's usually not this much talking. And Spider-Man's like, oh, sorry, you know? That's like the moment of the Civil War appearance that really works for me in terms of Spider-Man, because of that quippiness.
Yeah. And I definitely was into it. I was there for it as a Spider-Man fan, seeing him just kind of being a goofy teenage kid in this environment where he's suddenly around a much more serious group of people than he's had to deal with in the past. And so I definitely did enjoy that. And I think that continues pretty well into Homecoming and Far From Home as well, that he's still this kind of just like quippy kid who's not really like, he's not like shit talking or mean, but he's definitely like he just talks while he's fighting people. And you know, I've always kind of enjoyed that about Spider-Man. And yeah. I think that they portrayed it very well in these movies.
Yeah, this Spider-Man isn't, like you said, isn't mean. This Spider-Man is almost, and that might be the thing to say, is that these movies are filled with, or Spider-Man's instances, of course the two Spider-Man, Homecoming and Far From Home, Civil War to a lesser extent, but he's very much of like a childlike innocence type of thing. Like as Peter Parker, you know, when Iron Man sits him down and says, like, why do you do this? Like, why do you get out of bed in the morning and be Spider-Man type of thing? And it gets really emotional and that type of thing. And it's very, very, not naive, I think very innocent or a very pure view of the world, which is kind of what we want from Spider-Man. I think when we get to Homecoming, that's when they crank that up to 11. Like Zach mentioned, you know, the thesis of these movies is make it like a John Hughes movie, make it like an early Cameron Crowe movie. It's about the relationships. Like I read some quote where, you know, even Tom Holland was like, I want to be like a high schooler first and Spider-Man second, and that type of stuff. And none of that worked in these movies for me. In the first one, all the high school stuff, I was like, oh no, I can't stand this. This is, I took it as, this is clearly for a generation that is much younger than me. Like, I could not latch on to it. And then the second movie, Far From Home, the first 30 minutes of their travel montage, basically, it plays like Sabrina Goes to Rome or the Lizzie McGuire movie. It's so ridiculous. So I guess that the Spider-Man stuff, I'm totally with you, Ben. I kind of dig Tom Holland as Spider-Man now, especially, you know, in the action scenes. They do a lot of cool, you know, action stuff in the fights, which I'm sure we'll get to. But his Peter Parker is so whiny, he's so childlike. And I guess that brings me to something I've said many times in this podcast, and I want to talk about Tom Holland. I had no idea who Tom Holland was before he played Spider-Man. And prior to this recording, I had only seen him appear in Civil War. And I think him being so melancholy and so wispy with his voice, he sounds like Michael Cera in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World in that scene in Civil War. He comes across to me as like a child. Like, I know he's supposed to be playing 15, or maybe even 14 or 15 in Civil War. I don't know my MCU timeline that well, but he comes across to me like he's 8. Like, I do not take Tom Holland seriously as an adult actor. Like, I see him as a small child who is out of place. And I think it's because I saw that first scene in Civil War. After watching Homecoming, that wore off a little bit. And actually in Far From Home, I saw him more as a full-fledged type of, you know, action and adult actor, of course. And yeah, he's growing up and things like that, I know it, but they played him a lot more grown up or mature, I think, in Far From Home, which I appreciated. But what do you guys think of? We've talked about, you know, Peter Parker now, both in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Just in the Peter Parker aspect, how does this one rank up? And Ben, I wanted to ask you specifically, what do you think of his nerdiness in these movies? Because that was something we talked a lot about. His nerdiness and his intelligence has never really landed in the last two series of Spider-Man.
His nerdiness definitely comes across a little more. He's definitely more of like an outcast. In this, he has his one friend Ned, and then otherwise people are like ragging on him and shit. Especially Flash Thompson, which is even though Flash Thompson's character is very much not who Flash Thompson is canonically.
Yes.
At least that character is still picking on Peter Parker. So nerdiness wise, I think he comes across, and I do want to say that maybe it's giving them too much credit to say it was intentional, but it would make sense for his character to change so drastically across these movies, because like in the first instance in Civil War,
he's never done anything outside of his neighborhood.
Yeah.
In Homecoming, he's fresh off of Civil War, so he's learned a little bit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But then in Far From Home, he's fresh off of the Endgame, or Infinity War, because he wasn't in Endgame. But so he's seen some shit.
That's right. I figured we'd get here. The one thing he does in Endgame is fall down, and all the female characters take the gauntlet, whatever they have to take from him. That is what Spider-Man sets up, is the all female scene in Endgame. I think that's pretty much it, right?
Well, he's snapped out, right, for most of that movie.
Yeah, he does the Mr. Stark, I don't feel too good in Infinity War, I'm pretty sure. So he only comes back for the end in Endgame, and it really is just to. Well, he has that moment where he hugs Robert Downey Jr. Which I have to say, albeit unnecessary, I now have a lot more context for the relationship between Peter Parker and Tony Stark in these movies, now that I've seen Homecoming. But like I said, I got enough from it. But yeah, then he doesn't really have much to do in Endgame. But you're right, Ben, that's a good point that I think, there's 6 movies between Homecoming and Far From Home in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So he's definitely went through a lot. And of course, seeing what he goes through in Endgame, I agree with you that they do it to great effect, that he is more mature. He's still uncertain, but he's not as whiny and childish in Far From Home, which I greatly appreciated.
And they may have overdone his whininess and childishness so that they could have that growth.
Sure.
But the growth does make sense.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Absolutely. Zach, what do you think about the Peter Parker? You like? Well, I think you said before, as Peter Parker, he's fine. Is that right?
Yeah, like I said, at this point, I guess I've made a big point throughout this entire series. I do not think there will ever be a definitive Peter Parker across any media of Spider-Man. Just every single one is just so different. It's its own interpretation of it, so I don't know. That's why I have a hard time really criticizing certain aspects of the Tom Holland movies, because I know, like Homecoming is fine. I think, like I said, the last 30 minutes is a great Spider-Man, tale. I think Far From Home is not a Spider-Man movie. Because, again, Spider-Man is a product of New York City. He doesn't leave the city unless it is an Avengers-level threat where he's recruited. And then he's kind of a minor character. And then, it's all he does in Far From Home is that he's outside of the last 5 minutes. He's not in New York City at all, really. And that's the thing, is that in Tony Stark, Jesus, I get it. And I don't blame the writers. I blame the studio, because they just want to shove that character because Robert Downey Jr. equals dollar signs.
Yep.
But Robert Downey Jr. pretty much is a bigger character in the second film than he is in the first one. He doesn't even appear in it.
Sure.
And it's again, probably the best part of the second movie is zombie Iron Man. Because I remember in the theater just being this is a neat thing. He's dead and we're having his corpse come out of the ground. I don't care if it's a quasi illusion. This is at least something neat. It's different. I haven't seen it before.
I have to say that was a pretty neat moment. The whole Mysterio illusion thing, and you get the decayed skeleton Iron Man. I'm like, that is pretty cool, actually. I love that whole sequence in the second movie.
But this is the thing, though, is that it's Far From Home is a bunch of sequences that on their own, in a vacuum, are fine. But just as an overall Spider-Man tale, it doesn't work for me at all. And that's, like you say, it's we have the, God, Sabrina Goes to Rome, and we have all this where it's it's a giant, water monster, and Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio is fighting him. And it's well, if it's all an illusion, then how is anybody wet? It's an illusion. How is... Okay, Ben,
well,
please.
it's not the water monster is an illusion, but the drones, we see even later some drones underwater pushing the water around and shit.
Oh, fine.
And they are technically in Venice, even though at one point JB Smoove says they're in Rome. There are no canals in Rome, at least the last time I've looked into it. But there is actual water there under the illusion. So I'm with you, Ben. There's ways to make people wet, I guess.
But it's the idea that if this was all an illusion, of a famous landmark, what happens the next day? Are the drones just permanently there going forward? And then it's there's things like that. It was just nitpicking. I can see that. But it's just especially with a famous landmark, which is what both Homecoming and Far From Home are just obsessed with.
Yes.
They're obsessed with landmarks.
What do you mean, are the drones still there?
Well, okay, the whole point is they destroy Venice. Isn't that the point, that the water eternal destroys Venice?
Yeah.
Knocks over some building, the clock tower thing happens, that type of stuff.
In order to sustain the illusion, that means that there had to be drones permanently there.
The destruction's not an illusion.
Yeah, because
the drones are weaponized, and we actually see a scene where they up the intensity of the weapons, and they just they shoot and destroy pillars.
That's the one I was going to mention, Ben. Yeah.
But aren't those the ones aren't those the Stark Industries ones?
They in that scene that Ben just referenced, yes, they are, but we have notion that he has weaponized drones earlier in the Prague scene because Spider-Man webs one while it's invisible. So we know that he has drones prior to getting the magic sunglasses.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, he definitely has drones, and there's no reason to believe they're not weaponized. And I think so. It's not entirely clear what his drones were like. He very well could be working with the same drones that Stark set up the Edith system with.
Sure.
And there's just more of them in the Edith system because he did work for Stark and create a lot of he created the hologram technology.
Well, can we talk about the awkward, just shoving, shooing, of just putting things oh yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal was there in the background, the light just wasn't on.
Oh my god, that might have been one of my favorite parts of the movie when we get the thing. I forget if it's an Iron Man movie or a Avengers movie, whatever they flash back to reveal that Jake Gyllenhaal, Mysterio, was the one who created this illusion technology. Yeah, the barf technology, which I never would remember they called it. They do that snap zoom to Jake Gyllenhaal's face in the shadows in the background at the Stark Enterprise show, and I thought that was so funny. Because you're right, Zach, they're just ha, you never noticed this before because it was never there.
Then even they had the shot too of the guy who Jeff Bridges yells at in the first film.
Yes.
And it's these are all the people that have been treated badly by Tony Stark. That guy didn't even interact with Tony Stark.
He got just yelled at, by what's his name? Yeah, from that
Jeff
movie.
Bridges.
Yeah.
And it's okay, so we're just bringing that's fine. I'm glad the actor got a paycheck. Good for him. But it's I'm supposed to care. It's oh yeah. And again, it goes back to the fact of every single one of these Spider-Man movies is just the sins of Tony Stark somehow fall upon Peter Parker's shoulders. And
Peter Parker essentially becomes Tony's son. He's a superhero son.
Which is fine, except for the entire point of Endgame from Tony Stark's thing is he has a daughter. And that's
because Peter Parker disappeared and he needed a new child.
Which is fine. Which is fine, but remember, Far From Home is after Endgame, so we went through this entire thing of Tony Stark. The whole reason why that they had to bring everybody back after the fact, not that they could go back in time and reverse it, from what I remember of Endgame, was okay, I don't want anything to change in the last 5 years. So like I said, the whole daughter thing feels in Endgame still feels like an afterthought. Because again, I remember we talked about this years ago that they had the 13 reasons why girl be his daughter grown up, and they cut that they filmed it and they cut it out because they're yeah, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, isn't that Tony Stark's entire impetus for Endgame? But yeah, it doesn't matter.
You guys are bringing up good story points, but we can't gloss over the fact that the guy who plays that, disenfranchised scientist in the original Iron Man and then now in Spider-Man Far From Home, that's Peter Billingsley. That's Ralphie, the main character from A Christmas Story. That's insane.
Is it really?
Yeah, it actually is.
How about that?
And he's in both. He's actually the guy playing the same character in both movies. Yeah, that's a very old Peter Billingsley. Not very old, but you know what I mean. Older than what everybody knows what he looks like. I have to say though, this is something that I'm actually glad to bring up because I feel like I haven't gotten to do this in the previous ones. From my knowledge of Spider-Man, getting to what you guys are just talking about, I've always loved Mysterio. Mysterio was always kind of my villain in the little Spider-Man that I was, opened up to back in the comic book shops, I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff. I love that it was I think his original origin story is he's just a visual effects guy from a movie studio that was wronged, and he just wants to, use illusions and smoke and mirrors to, commit crimes. I think I played some video game with Spider-Man once where he's just Mysterio's trying to rob an art gallery or something like that. Very basic crimes, and he's using illusions. So I kind of really liked seeing Mysterio in this second movie, finally getting to see, a villain that I know something about and latch onto on the big screen. I do have to say, though, that this moment that it's revealed that, he's an ex-disgruntled Stark Enterprises employee, and that's what his whole crew is and that type of stuff. when that reveal happens, after he gets the magic sunglasses from Peter Parker and they're in that bar or whatever, and the illusion like slowly starts to dissipate, and he's like, someone get this stupid thing off me, but we're halfway there, you know, that type of thing. I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's a neat reversal, which I saw coming because it's Mysterio, and, you know, there's still an hour left in the movie. But then the movie grinds to a halt so he can give us everybody's backstory that's important to his crew. And that drove me crazy, that goes on for like 7 minutes of explanation to all these people who would know why they're doing this, right? It's like that doctor thing we've talked about, Ben. Like, why are these characters speaking right now? They're all aware of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like, that scene is just exposition for the audience, and exposition for the audience always feels weird. But, you know, it's how they run things. Like, it's just a thing that they use in movies to give information. Is it the best thing? Mm-hmm. No. Did they have time for better things? Maybe. Should they have wasted screen time on those people beyond exposition? Probably not.
Sure. I hear you. You know, another thing, before I go all in on what I hated about this movie, I don't want to go too hard on this because everybody knows I disliked these movies. Some of the positives, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but the first time I watched these, like, you know, I just actually watching them, I was so kind of bummed that in both movies, Peter Parker / Spider-Man gets high-tech shit. Like, he gets the new suit in the first movie. There's the whole stuff about him taking off the training wheels. He doesn't know how to work it. And it's like, there's all this tech, you know? And then in the second movie, he gets the magic sunglasses. There's more tech. And while I'm watching him, I'm like, oh, God. I'm like, can't they just give me Spider-Man? Like, why does he need all this tech from Tony Stark? Like, I know that's where the MCU's at, and Tony Stark, you know, invents time travel in one evening in Avengers Endgame, which is the most annoying thing to me. But I'm like, tech. It's all tech. But after I finished watching the movies and I was actually, you know, kind of formulating my thoughts on them, I kind of appreciate this more, and this might just seem like, you know, crazy for me to be saying, but I thought of this. Spider-Man in these movies, they inherently give him a lot of tech, not only because that the MCU is so tech-heavy with everything Tony Stark and, you know, the Hulk and all the scientists and smart minds do, not only because of that, but because this is the only Spider-Man franchise we've seen, of course, of the 3 we were discussing this month, where all of the villains are solely based on tech. Like, I kind of love the fact that we have to give Spider-Man some tech because Michael Keaton is just a regular dude who has alien technology. Jake Gyllenhaal is a regular dude who has really advanced technology. So I kind of rationalize to myself, oh, they have to give Spider-Man tech to go up against tech. Like, in the other movies, you know, I'm thinking Doc Ock, that was a big science experiment got wrong, gave him his powers, even though he kind of gave himself his powers with the AI and stuff. But the original Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, that's an experiment gone wrong. Sandman, Lizard, you know, of course, Rhino was not an experiment got wrong, but he doesn't count, as we talked about last week. And then also even, James Franco, as I think the Hobgoblin we called him, there's not really a science experiment gone wrong there. It's more of that he hits his head and remembers things, you know? So I'm not saying that this is the first time we have supervillains that are willingly supervillains, but I like that there's no villain in both of these movies that also has inherent powers. They are just people making choices to do villainous things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
yeah, I'm with you. I don't. So from the directorial standpoint, maybe that makes sense. I will say that Spider-Man never needed tech to fight these people in the comics or in the 90s cartoons.
Sure.
He never needed tech he didn't create. Because Spider-Man does have tech. It's just way low tech compared to Tony Stark. But he makes trackers and he makes taser webs at some point. And he does have these things, but he gets them way further spread out. And so I kind of thought of it more as them just jump starting Spider-Man, so they didn't have to go through the process of like, why does he have this tech?
Okay.
You know, like I felt like they just wanted to skip all that and get straight to Spider-Man that has tech. And in doing so, they definitely gave him more tech than he would have had otherwise. But that only makes sense if the tech is coming from Iron Man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting, like, we've talked about it last week, and I think it is going to happen, if we ever get more, a different Spider-Man, the fourth iteration of Spider-Man. I think they totally have a laundry list of things that the earlier movies have did, and they cross out those, and they try and make the best thing from it. And in this case, this being the MCU movie, they can cross out as much shit as they want and fill it in with stuff that is related to Tony Stark, to the Avengers, to the events of other movies. So they didn't really have that tough of a job coming up with new stuff. And I'm with you, Ben, that just giving him the tech and jump-starting those ideas and using it to grow the character, even if I don't think that's executed well, like the learning scenes with Peter Parker or Spider-Man with his new tech, they're also, that's a fine story decision, even if it doesn't land for me, that type of thing. I do have to say, though, when he's trying to learn his suit in the first movie and it's revealed that it's only been 37 minutes, that's a fairly chuckle-worthy moment, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I really want to tell her, but it's kind of weird, Hey, I'm Spider-Man.
What's weird about that?
What if she's expecting someone like Tony Stark? I mean, imagine how disappointed she'd be when she sees me.
Well, if I were her, I wouldn't be disappointed at all.
Thanks, Karen. It's really nice to have somebody to talk to. Hey, how long we been here anyways?
37 minutes.
What? 37 minutes? That's insane!
I don't know, Zach, any thoughts on the text or the villains? I guess let's talk about the villains, and let's transition to that. I mean, Michael Keaton and Jake Gyllenhaal, great actors. My favorite parts of these movies. Like, every time Michael Keaton had a scene in Homecoming, I was so refreshed. Jake Gyllenhaal screaming like a diva director when he's trying to work out all the illusion stuff. I thought that was so much fun. These are some good villains. I latched onto them, as I always do in these superhero movies.
I'm sure that you appreciate that Michael Keaton is playing a Birdman.
Oh, well, yes. Ben, and if I didn't realize that, I could have looked at the 15-plus IMDb trivia facts that state that as well. But yeah, of course, he's playing Birdman. I have to say, the first reveal of the Vulture in Homecoming, I think, when we haven't seen Michael Keaton like in his suit, full Vulture suit or anything. The first time we see him is when he like swoops into the air and catches Spider-Man or something. It really comes out of nowhere, and I thought it was a great moment. And he looks horrifying, like just the green eyes, the very, just blacked out face type of stuff. Oh, Michael Keaton was fantastic in this movie.
Well, and that's something I never cared for Vulture as a villain in the 90s series, or really in any of the Spider-Man content I've ever seen. Vulture was never somebody I was very intrigued by. The notion that he is a down on his luck construction worker or construction company owner that has to steal technology to survive after that government contract thing ruins his life, like, that made him so much more compelling.
Oh, yeah. He was like a regular guy type of thing.
Oh, yeah, and I definitely, like, given that I'd never cared for Vulture, the fact that I like him that much in that movie was kind of surprising to me.
Okay. Yeah, and I know, so speaking of Vulture, even though, like I said, I'd never seen this movie before, I knew that Michael Keaton played the Vulture as the villain. I knew that, I think because of you, Zach, or just cultural osmosis, I knew that the opening of the movie, or really his origin story as the villain, is that, he's trying to, he gets a government or city contract to clean up the mess at the end of the first Avengers movie, but then, Stark Enterprises comes in and takes it over from him, something like that. I knew all these beats about Michael Keaton in this movie, so it wasn't like, I was going to be surprised by any of this stuff watching Homecoming for the first time. You know what nobody ever told me that was actually a surprise kind of like what the fuck moment? I did not know that Michael Keaton was going to be the father of the love interest. Like, when he opens the door on Homecoming night or prom night or whatever it is, I was actually like, oh, holy shit, I didn't see that coming. Nobody had spoiled that for me, which very rarely happens these days. But I thought that was a nice little twist. Of course, they're kind of just rehashing the Willem Dafoe stuff from the first Raimi movie, Willem Dafoe figuring out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. But this one, it just kind of dropped on me out of nowhere, and that was pretty shocking to me. I don't know, I got a good movie moment from an MCU movie. I don't think there's many of those in my life.
Well, and they had the element of surprise going for them since they were not the same color.
Yes, well, of course, yes.
It's like, there's just no, like, you're not, obviously mixed race people exist, etc., but you're not even thinking about who her parents might be or anything like that, because there's no similarity between her and Keaton. And I don't think they ever tell us that her name is Toombs, if it even is.
There was nothing there that made me think they were connected at all, until that moment, of course.
Yeah, I definitely was also caught off guard by that the first time I watched this. Of course, you rewatching it for this, I knew that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know, Zach. Maybe you know better than us. Was that hidden from the marketing? Like, was that in a trailer or anything? Like, did you?
No, they kept that hidden. Okay. I guess I remember sitting through Homecoming in the theater and just kind of being like, I don't like Liz isn't a character. She's just love interest. She's just on a pedestal because the script has written her that way.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, oh, he's going like it's his very first date. He's taking her to the dance. And it's like, or I'm sorry, it's a Homecoming. And it's like, okay, like I don't care because we haven't been given a reason. There isn't that thing of him like the pining over the love interest, Liz in the first film, is like non-existent. So I'm in the sense of like, there's no real connection there. Like, say what you will. I know a lot of people complain.
They do have that scene where they're just like, have we seen her in that top? And they're like staring at her. I think that is the extent of the pining.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it exists. It's just, it's creepy and
wafer thin. Wafer thin.
Yeah.
And so like, it's a reveal. It is a reveal. I can't argue with that, like in objective sense. There's just no stakes to it because it's like Liz isn't really a character, and it feels like it's clever because like, okay, we didn't expect it. It's kind of like seeing a sign that says like kind of points you in the direction of right, and you just go left, and it's like, okay, like nothing said I couldn't go left, so why not? No, like I said, no, I didn't think it was a great reveal. I think I said everything after that's a lot of fun, like the car ride. And he's like, "Go on in, honey. Like I gotta give Peter the old dad boyfriend talk."
Oh, and then,
yeah.
Like I said, anything with Michael Keaton is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and Michael Keaton is like easily like my favorite part of Homecoming because it's nice to see an MCU villain that's not just like the evil doppelganger of the protagonist.
Yes.
Like that alone makes him like top tier just for that reason alone. And plus, like, he's not mustache twirling. Like every MCU villain is mustache twirling. And I'm just like, wow, like he's just like, again, he's an honest working man who like he didn't really do, I guess, is he committing crimes? Yes. But like, I think there's even a line of dialogue very early on where he's like, oh, Tony Stark creates this mess and he's getting paid to clean it up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's great. I'm like, and that's the thing that's like, I'm kind of frustrated about these movies that like they have such potential. I'm like, wouldn't that be great if you have a moment in either the first or the second film where like Peter has to reflect on the fact like, oh, I idolized this guy and all he did was cause harm. And even though he like stopped making weapons, he caused collateral damage and profited off that. Mm-hmm. And like, wouldn't that be great where he has to come to this realization of like separating the man from the legend, much like we've talked about numerous times on Cinema Oddities, like separating the art from the artist. Like, wouldn't that be a great like idea that's never been explored in contemporary comic book films? And it's like, no, we've got to fight Mysterio because he has magic sunglasses I gave him by accident. And I'm like, oh, movie, like you had potential to do something clever, and then it just comes down to like just like a blue laser in the sky, and like we got like punch Mysterio in the face.
I think I completely agree that both of these movies set up some fantastic ideas, which the MCU has done before. I know I've said it well before we started this podcast, Zach, but there's that moment at the beginning of Iron Man 3 where some little kid like asked Tony how he escaped the wormhole at the end of the Avengers, and he has like a panic attack. And I'm like, that's so cool. I hope the movie's about that. And it's not. It's not at all. I feel like
about 10 minutes of helicopters blowing up his mansion.
Exactly. And these movies kind of fall into the same thing. I think Far From Home sets it up better. I loved the idea where they're like, what happened with Thanos? Some people are 5 years older, some people aren't, you know? Like, what's that going to do to society or the school systems or anything like that? I'm like, that's a really, really neat idea.
I know, like, it's funny, because Zenger and I, like, discussed this movie when it first came out 2 years ago, and I want to ask Rob this question, because this is a great Rob question. I imagine, Ben, you'll appreciate it as well. If you have, like, okay, half the human population is just, like, wiped off the face of the earth, then 5 years later, again, I don't know what like models would look like. The idea of like the human race trying to like propagate again. Then you have that 50% as of 5 years ago of like come back. Wouldn't there be like mass famines and stuff? Like there'd be no way to support that because in 5 years, much like we like real life, the supply chain would like slow down, contract, and then all of a sudden you have this like explosion in population growth again. Like, wouldn't you like these people would all die? Like, I would say at least 20% of the people who were snapped back. By all means, enlighten me if I'm looking at this under the wrong lens.
And also, Ben, whatever logical answer you are about to give, and that I will probably agree with, just know that they are going to give us the most illogical answer whenever the Eternals came out already. So whatever they say in the Eternals is going to be the stupid answer. Ben, you're about to give us the better answer.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you, especially because most of these come off the top of my head as I'm hearing you talk about it. But they did have the power to create anything with the gauntlet. There's no reason to believe that they stopped at bringing people back. They could have also brought the supply chains back.
Oh God, I could totally. Oh my, how cool would that have been in Endgame? You know, that scene where the Hulk puts the gauntlet on, and what some character says to him, he's like, "Remember, just wish to bring all those people back." And Hulk was like, "We're not stopping there. We're gonna reset, the industry of the world with this snap as well."
We have to make sure China has enough shipping containers. Damn it!
Yes, exactly. So. And it is Tony Stark eventually that does the snap, right? And Tony is definitely a forward thinker. So
Tony stops Thanos. His entire thing is just like Hulk is the true hero of Endgame because he's the one who brings everybody back into existence, right?
Well,
and it's Tony who just wipes out Thanos.
I know that's the surface level of Endgame, but I think what Ben is saying is that since we don't have this mechanism of you have to state your wish before you snap, that it works like Ghostbusters. Like, I'm surprised that, if Tony was like, I want to take out Thanos and, make sure my company is running all of the agriculture to bring all the world back up to working order. It could totally happen that way. It's like like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man should have popped up at the end of Endgame, and Tony Stark would have been like, man, I had marshmallows on the brain. Got to fight that real quick. Or in Adventure Time, I know Jake has a wishing gun at a certain point and he makes a sandwich because couldn't stop thinking about that sandwich.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that they necessarily used that reasoning or that they even thought about it, but it totally could happen. The gauntlet is an answer to that question, despite the fact that it is a very good question. Okay, Ben, I'm not sure how much we've delved into this, you and I, but Rob knows, I love movies with, internal logic. It's the It Follows dilemma, the Purge dilemma. There's a couple other ones in there where, these movies have these rules, and I love dissecting them. We see in Far From Home, someone's a marching band recital or something, and we see, half the people just, disappear, and then, they appear back, 5 years later during a basketball game. Yeah.
What happens if you were flying... What happens if you were flying on a plane and you just magically reappear?
You fall to the ground.
Okay. You fall 40,000 feet to your death.
That is
definitely.
That's the absolute thing. And also, it's one of the common time traveler jokes is that if they don't take into account the motion of planets in space, they end up in space, that type of thing.
Yeah.
You want to know what the real answer is that I actually found in my research for this? Kevin Feige has gone on record saying that when Hulk brought all those people back with the second snap, he made sure they were in safe positions.
Oh, made sure they were in safe positions? Okay.
Yes.
So if he made sure they were in safe positions, he probably also made sure they had food. Why not?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes implicit stuff that they swept under the rug in Endgame. Absolutely.
Sure.
So you're telling me when they're not saying that Back to the Future is nonsense and Die Hard's a time travel movie, there were certain meetings in the corner that we didn't get to see?
Yeah. Seems like it.
None of this matters, but it's fun because, I think we talked about it in Avengers Endgame. It's none of this matters. I concede that, but you can't crap on other movies and then just do your own weird plot device. Just keep your powder dry. Just be Back to the Future, but different.
So you bring up the airplane thing. An extension of that, or kind of along the same lines. It's people in elevators.
Sure.
The elevator, if the elevator's not on the same floor or in the same position, and then they come back. I prefer to believe that it's the War of Tomorrow or whatever the fuck that Amazon movie's called, where they just got blipped into the sky and fell to the city, and a bunch of them died. I personally love that scene, and I would have loved to have seen that in a Marvel movie, but I guess we'll accept Feige's response.
Yeah, that, it was just made sure they were all safe, that type of thing. I'm glad we're on this topic, though, of what happened in the blip. I never knew that any MCU movie called it the blip. I had never heard that, even through like cultural osmosis, but I guess that's what we're calling it. There is a moment. It's so small, but it's probably the thing that interested in me most in all 2.5 of these movies, watching the Spider-Man segments of Civil War. Martin Starr, as the teacher, at a certain point, says that he thought his wife was snapped out of existence, but it turns out that they had a real funeral for her. Turns out she ran away with a man from her hiking group. When this was stated, I was like, can I just see a whole movie about that? Because that sounds fucking awesome. Like, what do you think about a non-superhero movie set in the time period that Thanos snapped people away? Like, the common man just being like, well, how do I deal with this? And it's like this thriller about the wife just going to cheat on him or something, I thought that was
I'm
wild.
totally down for that.
Yeah.
For, like, movies that take place during the blip. Because there had to be some amount of chaos when it's like, well, most of the police in this city are gone.
Yes.
So, like, that would have been very interesting because it was not based on any criteria. So, like, you're going to have some cities where criminals outnumber police afterward or purge-like scenarios going on for some amount of time.
Isn't that Hawkeye's entire story that, like he just goes on a murder spree, like, killing criminals?
I believe that is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the Ronin thing, he's... Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like a samurai without a master, and he just murders a bunch of people. I don't know if it's MCU canon, but it is definitely something that happened in the Marvel universe.
Does it? I think Martin Starr says something like, he's like, my wife pretended to be snapped away, but she really ran away with a guy from her hiking group, and we had a funeral. We haven't had a funeral for her, and they were like,
no, he said we had a fake funeral for her. Well, it was a real funeral.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, that line when he's like, well, it was a real funeral. That got me. I was like, that's really fucking weird.
Yeah, definitely.
Did I tell you how my wife pretended to blip out? Turns out she ran off with a guy in her hiking group. We had a fake funeral for her and everything. Well, the funeral was real, but it's because I thought she was really dead. Do you want to see the video?
That was so interesting to me, that line, and I was just like, yeah, give me more of that. Like, how are these, like, completely ancillary characters dealing with the fact? And I know they did that a little bit in Endgame. Wasn't, like, Captain America, he, like, is doing, like, a support group for people that lost loved ones in the snap or something.
Yeah.
But I go harder on that stuff. These are great ideas. Like, even the whole thing at the start of Far From Home, when the kids on the TV are expositing about how where they're like, well, we had to restart the school year because all these kids came back, and one kid's like, it was a fucking joke. Like, I don't want to take these tests again. And I'm like, that's not just a funny line. There's ideas there. That's what I really care about. But then instead it becomes, Spider-Man has to punch somebody, as they always do, of course.
That's what you're signing up for when you watch Spider-Man.
Exactly, and that's the bummer of all these movies for me, I think, is I want more of the interesting stuff. I don't want this story over and over. Like we were saying, I think this one hits me the worst with the teenage stuff because it's so, coming of age, John Hughes and Cameron Crowe type of movies. But I guess that brings me to something else I want to talk about. The notion in both of these movies that we are so greatly tied to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that, they got to call them Spider-Man movies, right? I guess my question becomes they had to call it Captain America Civil War. They couldn't call it the Avengers Civil War because, an Avengers movie had just come out or something like that. Like, I don't really see these as Spider-Man movies as much as I see them as cogs in the wheel of the MCU. You know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, they are primarily focused on Spider-Man doing, there's a Spider-Man story there.
Sure.
And, like, in particular, like, there's also Spider-Man villains, like Mysterio and Vulture. Like, those are Spider-Man villains, canonically. So, I mean, to some degree, I think it fits as much as naming any of them after the heroes fits.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happens that, like, Nick Fury plays a bigger role in this than he did in, like, the first Thor movie or something.
Yes.
But
yes.
But I don't think that is, like, presents a problem for me as an audience member. It's like I'm getting enough Spider-Man that it feels like Spider-Man should be the titular character.
Okay.
And
gotcha.
he I mean, it is about him and his learning how to cope with being in the broader universe. So in that sense, yeah, why not?
Okay. No, I know what you mean. And yeah, you're right. There, of course, we're following Spider-Man villains, that type of stuff. It feels like, at this point, I think the 16th and the 23rd or 22nd movies in the MCU or something like that they almost have to be cogs just to keep the story moving along. I guess maybe Far From Home a little less because it's the aftermath of the big conclusion.
Like, let's just start calling them MC28, like MCU 28.
That's a good point you bring up. And I think that, I think, Zach, we've talked about it before. There's a conscious decision on the part of Disney and Marvel to no longer put numbers in their movies type of thing. But that's what they are. They have to be seen. Like, there's no way that you can go and jumble these and watch them on a first thing and understand what's happening, Well,
but this is the thing, though, is that, like, we're getting to a point, like, where obviously No Way Home is trending. Mm-hmm. Is that, like, all of this now is continuity. All of it is continuity. Like, it's no longer just like, okay, like the Marvel thing. Like, if you were there in 2008, like, everything. Now it's like, nope, you gotta watch all the Sony movies. Now you gotta watch all the Fox movies. Now you gotta watch, and that's where, like, it's like, okay, like that the beautiful simplicity of just like, okay, like you begin in 2008 and just draw a line through the years until current year here.
Well, so I definitely understand where you're coming from with that, but I personally, like, my I don't know, guess or estimation as to what's going to happen is that all of this stuff will be referenced and used in this one movie and maybe in the sequel to this movie, but that in the end, this stuff is not going to stay in the universe.
Well, but it's the idea that, like, there is that cultural baggage. Maybe that's I don't know how to describe it. Is it like I get it, it's intentional, but it's the idea that they are deliberately now wanting to fold that 20. They again, Marvel's big thing is that, like, whereas with DC never split itself apart. Marvel had to in the 90s, which is like ancient history at this point. And they want everything to kind of just be lumped in together, even if it's kind of just like, again, it's the red string on the cork board. But, like, I don't know. Like I said, I guess even forgetting about what they're going to do with Spider-Man, like, going forward, like, it's just getting more and more intricate in a way that, like, oh God, Rob, like, how many rings are there in Shang-Chi?
Between 9 and 11, I know that.
And it's like, oh, but then you have Trevor Slattery in Iron Man 3, and you have Guy Pearce, and then you have, like, all these things that are just kind of like offshoots. It's like, I think, like, with anything, like, it's kind of like it's the House of Cards. The higher you go, the more just like, okay, like, it's like the breeze gets less and less that'll take to kind of just knock it over. And again, the current event state, like the Eternals, is that weird, like, just like fever pitch of it all, which I don't think is the case. I think it's just at worst a bump in the road because it'll make money. It'll sell a bunch on, like, streaming and home video. But, like, yeah, I just think the more and more they go with this, it's going to get a little more just like, it's like anything in life. The more you grow something, the more just strands they're going to have to be pruned after a while. It's like a plant almost. It can be healthy, but there's going to be some branches that need to be a little bit more nurtured than others.
I think I agree with what both of you guys were just saying. And that was something I wanted to ask you as well. Like Ben, you said at the start you saw these movies in theaters, and I'm sure, Zach, you saw some of these in order, I guess is what I'm saying, which I did not. Like, I saw Infinity War and Endgame and whatever the hell other MCU movies I saw without seeing Spider-Man Homecoming. But I never felt, that I didn't get the sense of what was going on. I never felt lost or anything like that. And that's the structure of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's like a serialized TV show. They want you to get involved on any episode you start watching. Has stuff from Far From Home come up in further MCU movies? Because what now? Well, I don't think Black Widow counts because I think that took place before Far From Home. But, like, in Shang-Chi and in Eternals, if anybody knows about it, did any of this stuff matter, or is it only going to matter to No Way Home when that comes out? And I think that's why I was saying I agree with you, Ben, that this stuff is placed into the universe, but then they're going to say, yeah, it's there, you can remember it if you need to, it's not that important, and we're going to call on it when we're ready to call on it. Like they did with the Jake Gyllenhaal in the back of the, did the snap zoom to reveal he was the creator of the technology and stuff. So I think I'm with both of you guys, that a lot of this setup doesn't really matter, but it matters when they say, hey, look at that. Remember that from 3 movies ago? Now that's important.
This is this weird thing, Robin. Like, we've talked about it a lot. Like, when it comes to just, like, nostalgia baiting. And that, okay, like, we're bringing back, Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina, Rhys Ifans, Thomas Hayden Church, Jamie Foxx. And it's like we're referencing, and we talked about this in the Amazing Spider-Man discussion, but it's like we're referencing things that weren't even popular.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's this weird sort of like almost anti-nostalgia, which I think is fascinating as like a cultural touch point, because like that's never really happened before. Referencing things that were not popular. Unless it's like a joke, but again, like think about it. Who on earth was clamoring for more Jamie Foxx Elektra?
Well, sure, but what's the
other than Jamie Foxx?
So yeah, I mean, yeah. But what's the appeal to you then, Zach? Because you were one of the first people to tell me, you were like, Jamie Foxx's Electro, Tobey Maguire, and this stuff. It's coming back for Spider-Man. I was like, Zach, I don't care,
syndrome.
you know.
Stockholm syndrome.
Well,
Stockholm syndrome.
That's what we call. That's what we call it. But
that's what I call it.
In your heart of hearts, do you think that is really what is appealing to you about this stuff?
I want you to know, Robert. There's been a lot of soul searching. Like I said, I for the record, folks, I've never met Ben in the flesh. He has a great disembodied voice. It's the idea that, like I said, I've been a Spider-Man fan for almost 20 years now. It's the idea that like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was very influential on me, but like going back and like really looking at like these Spider-Man films under this lens with like scrutiny, intellectual, like let's see what these things are made of, let's dissect them.
Mm-hmm.
Those three films, like those first three films, are just like, it's nostalgia. It blinds me, because like even after those discussions, like we really, again, after 5 hours of talking, I kind of sat there and I'm like, these are not I don't think these are objective masterpieces. I don't think if it weren't for the fact that they were the first ones to the table, they would be remembered. And yet, like, it's like I'm like everybody else on the internet. Like, just for context, like the day we're recording this, they released a poster for No Way Home, and like Tobey Maguire's been trending all day because the joke is like it's the worst kept secret that he's in this movie. Yet they've done a phenomenal job of not letting anything really of him leak that's substantial.
Okay,
and that's the thing. Like the moment we see him in that suit, it's like I think we talked about this at some point, maybe a couple weeks ago, or maybe I've lost track, maybe a couple of weeks from now. When I saw the Matrix Resurrections trailer, it was like, oh God, this trailer. I was kind of watching it and I'm like, ugh. I'm like, okay. And then you get to the very end with the digital rain and you hear like that music sting of the Matrix coding. And I'm like, God damn it, I'm on board. I'm like, it's this weird, like it's like conditioning almost. I think the moment I see a, good Lord, 15, 20-year-old later, or 20 years later, Tobey Maguire, like it's going to be there. Like I know in the theater, because apparently, spoiler alert, like you're going to get Kirsten Dunst.
Mm-hmm. It's
like, oh God, like we haven't seen that in forever. Relative to pop culture years, that is forever. Like, yeah, I think it's this, they're playing on multiple wavelengths of nostalgia that I don't think has ever been done before. Like, and I think that's kind of like, that's why I want to do No Way Home. And this is why we're having an entire month titled To Be Determined devoted to this, is that like I can't think, of, maybe you guys can, has this ever happened before, like on this sort of level? Like, I'm not saying there hasn't been like other things in media we've referenced in the past that are like quasi-popular that we've dredged back up. I'm not arguing that. But something so like just top shelf, like A+ tier Spider-Man, to go back and dig up the best, Alfred Molina, also with what's considered the worst, Jamie Foxx. And it's that weird balance of like just everything is getting brought back in this way. Like I think that it's so unique. And I don't think Marvel would have done this by itself. I think this is Sony being like, let's swing for the fences. So we got Tom Hardy again. Like, whereas I don't think Marvel would ever put one of its stars in a lobster tank eating a raw lobster. Sony's just crazy enough to be like, hey, let's try it and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, the Sony thing, because you know there's the whole reason that, you know, the third movie's happening. I think between every Spider-Man movie that Sony releases, Marvel goes to them and tries to say, hey, you want to give up some of those rights? And they go, no, you're going to have to keep working with us. But Ben, I'm interested to hear what you say about the nostalgia question Zach posed, specifically for Spider-Man. But Zach, the way you phrase this big kind of team up or pulling from all these things that, you know, may or may not have even been liked by the masses, I think you're right in saying that it's unique for movies. The thing that I think of ever, just imagining like major crossovers, it's TV. I always think of TV, whether it be, you know, in the crime show, like Law and Order meets Chicago meets every Dick Wolf created character ever, that type of thing. But even, remember back in the day, Nickelodeon, it'd be like, Danny Phantom meets the Fairly Odd Parents, meets SpongeBob, meets Chalk Zone, I don't know, whatever other thing Nickelodeon shows mashed up together. So yeah, I think you're right saying that this is unique in the sense of a movie. I don't think we've ever seen this big pulling from these IPs in a movie before, unless the premise of the movie is that, like a Ready Player One or something. That's a different story. But yeah, I guess, Ben, I think what Zach was asking you, or asking us, was now that you've rewatched the Raimi trilogies, which we know weren't kind of your trilogy like it was for Zack back in the day, but do you have excitement now to see things from those get dredged back up in a new MCU Spider-Man movie? Or would you prefer it just kind of continue the way they've been going? And by saying been going, I don't really even know what I mean there, if that makes sense.
I wouldn't say that I would say I'm excited for No Way Home, but I wouldn't say that the reason I'm excited for it has to do all that much with the nostalgia or the Tobey Maguire, etc. It really has more to do with the breaking of the universe idea. So like they're creating, they've created a situation where we're getting some kind of multiverse aspect here.
Yes.
And I'm excited to see them abuse that in later movies as well, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So like it's maybe not going to stick with these particular characters that already existed, but now they can introduce alternative versions of characters and just do all kinds of crazy comic book shit. And a lot of that will probably just end up on Disney Plus streaming. But I'm kind of here for that. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing, like the DC animated movies, they've done like a Dark Justice League where you have like a bad Superman and whatever.
Yeah.
And it's totally something I could see them doing now, is making like a lower budget but still live action version of that. It's like I'd probably watch that. Why not? I put it on the same way I put on those DC movies, which would be like when I don't know what else to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I'm just excited for them to break that door open and really open up the multiverse to themselves in a way that they haven't before. And the fact that like the only character I care about seeing again is J. Jonah Jameson.
Sure.
Like,
okay.
He's the only character from those early movies that it's like that is that character. Like he is J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh yeah.
Whereas, and then of course I also like that. I mean, at least from the credits or from the end credit scene of Let There Be Carnage, it seems like Tom Hardy's Venom is going to have some kind of role in this movie as well.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
And I'm excited to see that version of Venom interact with Spider-Man. But I don't care about like is Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin coming back?
Yes.
I don't care about that.
Sure. Okay. That makes perfect sense. I think, you two are coming at it from almost, different sides, but reaching the same endpoint where Ben's like, multiverse, more characters, more things to play around with in the sandbox. And Zack is like, multiverse, I get to play with the toys I used to love to play with back in the day, and you two might be the two versions of the entirety of the audience. I imagine anybody who's really excited for MCU at all anymore, that's what they're either going multiverse, I can't wait to see what happens, or multiverse, I can't wait to see how what I already like gets reused type of thing.
Sure. And I think that they're like, I would love to see them fucking pull in like the old Fantastic Four shit too, just for the lulz.
Sure.
But no, I don't think that Willem Dafoe's character or who's the other one, Doc Ock, or any of those characters coming back is going to make for anything particularly spectacular. But I think Doctor Strange and Spider-Man interacting, and then Venom getting in there and having that to play with, I think that would be fun.
Sure. Okay, I figured we'd have to get here at a certain point since, the next 2 episodes of November are going to be Spider-Man adjacent type of stuff. I figured we'd have to get to doing some type of, what the hell do we think is going to happen in No Way Home? From what I've read, and once again, you guys, I read about this just, maybe 30 minutes before we started recording, so I'd have this information. You guys might know more. From what I've read, the premise of No Way Home is Spider-Man goes to Doctor Strange and says, Doctor Strange, can you use magic to give me a secret identity again? So he basically says, Doctor Strange, can you undo everybody knowing that I'm Spider-Man because of what happens in the end of No Way Home?
That cowboy, the Brokeback Mountain guy.
Jake Gyllenhaal, yes. So he goes to Doctor Strange and says, can you magic me a secret identity again? and Doctor Strange tries it, and it splits open the multiverse, and all the villains that we've been mentioning come back and have to beat Spider-Man, because they don't like Spider-Man as the abstract idea. Have you guys read or heard anything else? That's all I could find today about the bare premise of why there's all these villains in this new movie.
In essence, that's right. I mean, there is something where Peter Parker's in the room with Doctor Strange, and he's trying to alter the terms of the spell as Doctor Strange is casting it. Okay. And it's alluded to that has something to do with why the spell fails. But there's also that the guy who played Genghis Khan in Marco Polo, I don't know his name, he's like Doctor Strange's sidekick. Mm-hmm. He says something like, don't cast that spell. And Doctor Strange is like, I don't give a fuck. And he does it anyway.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily indicated that that's why it fails. It could just be that it's a complicated spell. But Doctor Strange does stop messing with the spell as he's casting it.
Okay.
Because like Doctor Strange is like, nobody's gonna remember your Spider-Man. He's like, nobody? What about Ned and MJ and Aunt May should probably know, and Tony Stark should probably know, even though he's dead. But yeah, that's the general premise. And then the world goes crazy. We see Fractals the movie a little bit, with like some trains duplicating and shit, and then a Green Goblin bomb comes out of the ground or something.
Okay. I like the way that you described that stuff with Doctor Strange, and I'm assuming Benedict Wong is the person the actor you're talking about, but where Benedict Wong would say something like, don't cast that spell, and Doctor Strange is like, script says I gotta cast the spell. Like, the movie makes me want to cast the spell, you know?
He does this thing where he's like, I won't do it, and then like he's giving Peter Parker side eye, like, yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Okay, sure. Okay. So they're all gonna get blended together, all this multiverse stuff. Like we said, we're gonna have our Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland teaming up to beat these guys. I don't know. I just hope that it doesn't become like a vomit of CGI that these Marvel movies sometime can become. Which I did have a little problems with. I think some of the drone stuff at the end of the second movie, that fight was totally disorienting. Little bits and pieces of it. But I mean, like, how much, I guess my question for you guys is, how much do you think that No Way Home is going to set up for the remainder of the MCU? Because that's something that we haven't talked about a lot about, Zack, when we did Endgame, we were kind of like, well, they have other things on the docket, but this is really the biggest conclusion we're ever going to get. This is like their second chance at like a jumping off point. Because I know, like, Black Widow is a wash, it seems. I think you two guys liked Shang-Chi, from what you told me. It really is falling on Spider-Man, this third Tom Holland Spider-Man, to really set up where they're going in the future, right? Because I don't think Shang-Chi or I don't know, Eternals also, if they've really done any heavy lifting yet.
So that's actually kind of an interesting idea, because like there was this idea that Captain Marvel was going to take over being like the lead Avenger.
Oh, yeah.
And then really Far From Home sets it up that Peter Parker is going to be the next Tony Stark. Mm-hmm. And Tony Stark has always been like some kind of unofficial leader or official leader. I mean, depending on how you look at it, because Captain America is like technically in charge, I guess.
Sure.
But Tony Stark has always been in charge. So I'm a little bit curious if they're actually going to put Peter Parker at like the mantle of the Avengers, which would be, that would definitely not fit any canon I'm familiar with. Spider-Man has always been like an auxiliary Avenger.
Yeah.
So that'll be kind of interesting. And, as you mentioned, like he wants to, Tom Holland is something about being Tony Stark 2.0. So that really could be the route they're going with this. And to be honest, I wouldn't completely hate it if they set that up, because I don't love Captain Marvel as a character. She's kind of Deus Ex Machina, the character, which I just have never been a fan of. I don't like, and like that's one of the reasons I'm also not a very big fan of Superman. Is like, sure, Superman is either too strong or actually just dead because of kryptonite or magic.
Yeah.
It's like,
check out this rock.
the only time that Superman ever gets like into an interesting fight is when he's like fighting Shazam or Black Adam, because they have magic that can hurt him some, but not.
Dude, yeah. I know we've talked about it. There's a great Justice League Unlimited episode where Superman and Shazam are fighting, and Shazam is holding Superman above his head, screaming Shazam to get the lightning to go into him. I'm like all about that type of stuff. That's weird comic book, like using the rules type of thing. Totally dig it.
Sure. And that's like the only interesting stuff or the only stuff I've ever really found interesting with Superman, because he's too powerful. He doesn't have limits, and without limits you don't have story, and that's something that I've kind of, like, Superman was created in a time that we needed that Infinity Man to come save us, but that's not, I don't feel like we're there anymore.
Definitely. I have not seen Captain Marvel, but from what I know from seeing her in other MCU movies like Endgame. And from what I've heard, that you're right, she is the Deus Ex Machina type of thing, especially at the end of Endgame with her flying through a ship type of thing. But I just wanted to know, Ben, I don't know if I should cut this out or not. Did you see Captain Marvel in theaters?
I did, yes.
You did? Zach, how did he get in? I don't want to blow up your spot, Ben. You're a white man. I thought white men were not allowed to see that movie.
Why are you outing him, Rob? Why are you outing him?
Because I have to know. I have to know if I should cut this out, or he has a story of how a white man got to see a Brie Larson movie.
Yeah, so I definitely she's personally sent me an email and told me not to go see it, and that I shouldn't support anything she ever does because of toxic masculinity or something. But I didn't get that email till after I was out of the theater. My phone doesn't always give me notifications at the right time, so I kind of did it against her wishes. And I felt bad about it, but, c'est la vie.
Fair. I think I'm the only one who took advice from her rules. I did not see that movie in theaters or ever, so I think I'm the only one who's done the right thing, according to Brie Larson.
Well, it is the right thing to not support nonsense like that.
Heyo.
But no, I mean, Captain Marvel is, it's kind of just okay. Mm-hmm. And they really could have done something so much better with that movie. In particular, they could have not told us her backstory before she knew it. And we could have learned it with her instead of just watching this character learn something we already know.
Oh, I gotcha.
That would have been infinitely more interesting to go into it and be like, I have amnesia and I'm on Earth and I don't know what the fuck's going on. And this whole movie's about me figuring out who I am. And that would have... Because, her origin story's not interesting. She, is near the Tesseract and gets powers. And then has power inhibitors on her, so she can't use her full powers. Mm-hmm. And then she, at the end of the movie, throughout the whole movie, she's told she's too emotional when she expresses zero emotion. And then it's like if Kristen Stewart came back from the dead, because she's dead, right? No, that's not. I'm sorry. If Kristen Stewart,
she's a vampire, I think.
That's Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. It's just she's not doing anything. And they're like, you're too emotional. You're letting your emotions get the best of you. And she's just like, I'm a blank slate, literally.
That's how I've always felt about Brie Larson. I haven't seen everything she's done. I've clearly never seen Captain Marvel. I've never seen Room. Not The Room, just Room. I know she got a lot of acclaim for that. But I don't know if you are going to remember this, Ben. It was so long. She is in Don John. Do you remember her in Don John?
I don't.
Okay, yeah. It's a really small part. I had to, actually remind myself because when I was doing my research, I was I knew we were going to have to bring up Brie Larson with MCU stuff, but she basically has the Silent Bob moment at the end of the movie where she's in the corner on her phone the whole time. She's one of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's friends or titular Don John's friends. And at the end, she looks up from her phone and she says something where is the exact message of the movie. It literally is the Silent Bob moment from Chasing Amy. And she is so checked out in that movie and she sucks. I went back and watched that scene and she is so boring and bland. And that's what I wanted to know from you guys, because I think you've seen Captain Marvel, Zach. Did she ever make a facial expression? Because, Ben, what you were saying about Kristen Stewart was giving you the same vibes I've been getting from Brie Larson as never making a facial expression and saying, I'm stoic, That, is that right?
Is confrontation a facial expression?
So the thing is, the movie doesn't say I'm stoic for Brie Larson. The movie says Brie Larson's too emotional. But Brie Larson has never experienced an emotion on screen, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, remember her in Endgame, at the beginning when she shows up to Thor and she's like, "Hey, Thor," and Thor's like, "I like her. Why? Because the script told me that." That type of thing. She has no presence in Endgame at all. But
what is the plot of Captain? Okay, you said you probably guess what? Jude Law. He's the bad guy, but he's the mentor as well. It's the exact. It's basically Iron Man again. Whereas the mentor is the bad guy, right? I only saw the movie once.
Yeah, in essence, she was, I don't know, kidnapped or found or something and taken into space and given Jude Law as a mentor. And it turns out that they're just exterminating the Kree for no reason or something. And they're actually the bad people. And then, so it's like Iron Man, but with a bigger universe, or a bigger stage, because they're including aliens. The aliens play almost no role other than that they are the victims. They could have easily been people from I don't know, any other part of the world, and it wouldn't have mattered, except that they had shape-shifting abilities, which made them more difficult to find on Earth. So, yeah, I mean, and then the plot is that she learns that her emotions aren't a hindrance, and that she should be her powerful woman self, and that's it. That's the plot.
I don't know. Sounds pretty great to me, Zach.
When you put it that way.
Well, and they even give us that like kind of disgusting montage flashback of her constantly being told that she was too emotional as a kid. And it's like, I just no, I don't care about this. Like, does anybody care about this? You know, and it's not like in some movies, and there are times when you guys bring it up, you're like, does anybody care about this? I'm tempted to be like, this isn't the part that you're supposed to care about. This is the setup for the part you're supposed to care about. And maybe that's what that was too, but it actually was just kind of like infuriating to watch, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Sure. The one thing I know about Captain Marvel, because of people telling me in cultural osmosis, is that it sets up that Nick Fury loses eye because of a cat, right? Am I misremembering this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even though in like Winter Soldier he says like I trusted a friend or something or whatever. Like I remember people saying it was very contradictory.
The friend he trusted was the cat. He trusted the cat that he didn't know at all to be a good cat, and it wasn't a good cat. That's what he meant.
That seems crazy to me. And maybe we should use this as a transition back into the Spider-Man movies, specifically what you said about Captain Marvel, Ben, because Nick Fury, well, Samuel Jackson I love seeing all the time. He's Nick Fury, of course. He's going to be Nick Fury forever, it seems, type of thing. Even in the modern comics, they've, made him look more like Samuel Jackson, it seems. But at the end, at the very end credits scene of Far From Home, and so not the Mysterio one, not the one with J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, I was so confused. So Maria Hill and Nick Fury were just aliens the entire time? That's what that last scene is supposed to tell us about the movie?
No, they're not aliens the entire... Well, they're aliens for all of Far From Home, but they're not aliens for all of the, MCU.
Yes, of course. Yeah, they're just aliens for Far From Home, absolutely, yeah. And also, this was told to me by at least 25 different IMDb trivia facts. One of them explains every moment in the movie where you can see it coming beforehand. And I'm like, that's all fun and that's fine and whatever, but what does that matter? Showing off that characters were not who they were should be a big twist. It should be a revelation. It should recontextualize how I think about what I just watched. And including it
in this...
Yeah, as a post-credit scene, I'm just like, does this matter? It was so strange to reveal something that big so late.
It doesn't matter at all for Far From Home. I don't know that it matters at all for the MCU, other than to set up that Nick Fury is somewhere else.
Yes.
Am I right about that, Zach?
Yeah, it's the reveal that S.H.I.E.L.D. has now been dissolved for 5 years in continuity. And it's like, Nick Fury is working on Sword.
Right.
Which is supposed to be lending more to what they're doing with the cosmic and stuff of Marvel.
Right. So it doesn't matter for the plot of Far From Home at all. It's not as if he was a baddie, and it's just laying groundwork for the future.
Sure. It was just I was so confused. I was like, this doesn't change anything, but shouldn't it? It seems like such a big deal. But you're right. It's just that setting up that from what I read, Nick Fury is off-world, and that's going to matter later. So they're setting those seeds, which I'm fine with. But I was just so fucking confused when that happened.
Sure, yeah. I
also didn't expect it. So when I was watching it, when we get the mid-credits scene with Mysterio video and J. Jonah Jameson, I was like, okay, and I was finishing up my notes and stuff, and I had lowered the volume. And when the post-credit scene started, I missed some of their dialogue, but I'm like, I don't think this matters, right? Can a post-credit scene matter this much? Which brings me to probably the greatest post-credit scene I've ever seen in Homecoming. The very end of the credits is the Captain America PSA talking about patience. And I totally get that. I'm sure, and from what I've read, that they're going for patience is a virtue, and it's referring to the fact that everybody just sat through the credits waiting for some scene in a movie type of thing. I think it even works better as a tongue-in-cheek reference to waiting for more Marvel movies. Like, I was honestly expecting Captain America to say, and be sure to swipe that credit card to help us beat Thanos on the way out, or something like that. Like, it really screamed as the joke we've been making for years.
Hi, I'm Captain America, here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have. Patience. Sometimes patience is the key to victory. Sometimes it leads to very little, and it seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing. How many more of these?
But he even says, sometimes you do all that waiting for nothing. Like, it's like they're making fun of them, that end scene in and of itself. But I guess for them to take that even further, for them to essentially be saying, like, the next Marvel movie probably also doesn't matter.
Exactly.
That would be pretty funny.
Well, even like the final line he says is, he breaks character. Yeah, and he's like, "Well, how many more of these are we doing, guys?" And it's like, and it's great. It's like I have to say that, like, oh god, because that wasn't a bad movie going experience. But by the time you got to that second post credit scene, I'm just like, and you have that, like, that's kind of fun. Like, I remember just laughing, being like, okay, like, there's a couple of moments in Homecoming that are actually pretty, oh god, like, considering how safe, like, Disney Marvel is, felt, like, relatively, like, biting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even the whole thing with, like, Hannibal Buress, like, the gym teacher has, like, what, 2 scenes?
Oh god! And, like when his first scene happens and he's showing the gym Captain America video, or in gym class the Captain America video, and I'm just like, oh, are we really doing this? Like, because earlier, like, one of the teachers was talking about the Sokovia Accords, and I'm like, oh no, we're jamming so much MCU into this. But then Hannibal Buress at the end of the video goes, okay, that's over. Listen to that guy. Or not. He might be a war criminal at this point. And it just is wonderful. I'm like, give him all the dialogue.
Hi, I'm Captain America. Whether you're in the classroom or on the
know him
too?
Yeah, we met.
The difference between success
I stole his shield.
or failure. Today, my good friend, your gym teacher, will be conducting the Captain America Fitness Challenge.
Thank you, Captain. I'm pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, but whatever. I have to show these videos. It's required by the state. Let's do it.
He says something like, I think he's a war criminal, but the state makes me show this.
yes. And then I also got a great laugh when Peter Parker and Zendaya are in detention, and Peter Parker just leaves, and Peter Parker is like a solid 10 seconds out the door, and Hannibal Buress goes, where are you going? Or something like that. Like, he is right. Far gone, and that's Hannibal Buress. Ben and I have known him for a while. He's so fucking funny, and he is great in the 2 scenes he has in that first movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And he called out Bill Cosby before anyone else did, so.
Oh, yes. He also called out somebody not making scrambled eggs for him. Was that the bit we watched from him, Ben, back in the day, where he's like, you got a pan? You got eggs, you can make scrambled eggs. Why won't you make me scrambled eggs? Is this ringing a bell? I have to dig it up. I haven't heard that in so long.
I definitely know that's a comedy bit, but I don't know for certain that that's Hannibal Buress.
Ooh, okay.
There's one where he's like talking about being in line at a grocery store and some crazy shit. That's the one I remember the best.
Okay. So the cinema audience, get ready for a correction and then multiple stand-up comedy clips. That'll be a little intermission for this episode.
Nice.
Hey kids, turns out that both Ben and Rob were right in that the sketches or the stand-up routines they were thinking of are both from Hannibal Buress. The one about the scrambled eggs that I mentioned seems to be from the 2012 appearance of Hannibal Buress at HBO's The Night of Too Many Stars. After an exhaustive 7 to 10 minutes of searching, I cannot find this clip, but I swear to you that it exists, and it was very funny from what I remember. I hope one day I can recover that. The other one that Ben mentioned, the grocery store line clip, I was able to find, and so here it is.
I realized recently my judgment gets messed up more by food and juice than it does by drugs and alcohol. Like, I love apple juice. I think it's delicious. I want to start my own apple juice company. I don't know how you go about doing that. I try emailing Mott's for advice. They're not really accessible, so I have to keep being a consumer. Me and my girl go to the grocery store. Mott's Fresh Press Natural apple juice, $1.79 for a half gallon. That's a great sale. So we get 8 bottles. 8 bottles is all we have. On the belt in front of us is an old man. He's looking back, shaking his head like, nah, nope. I'm like, what's wrong, old man? You mad because we got all this apple juice? Because you can go get some too. It's over there now 4, but if not, stop judging us, because hell yeah, we're hoarding this juice, taking advantage of this sale before the store realize what a horrible mistake they've made. And you know what? We're back here happy with our apple juice. You up there lonely with your Hormel chili, you lonely Hormel chili eating old man. And it took me a minute to realize he wasn't shaking his head because of the apple juice. He was shaking his head because my girlfriend was white and he didn't agree with that. But I was so caught up in the euphoria of having all that apple juice that for like a minute I lived in a world where racism didn't exist. I was like, it's obvious that this old man is just an apple juice hater. And he's just really mad because he can't acquire all the apple juice. And I'm a crying right now. Hey, thanks a lot, y'all.
But Hannibal Buress is great. I think also on that topic, J.B. Smoove as the other teacher who is obsessed with witchcraft in Far From Home.
Yeah.
J.B. Smoove is a very funny person. I wish they gave him more to do. I think his best moment in Far From Home is at near the very end when the kids are like leaving, and that one kid, I think Brad is his name, he's like, isn't this kind of crazy? Like Peter keeps disappearing and like now, and like Brad gives this whole monologue, but when he starts, he says like, isn't this crazy? And J.B. Smoove is like, yeah, man, this is wild. And because he's just been going along for the ride because the other teacher, played by Martin Starr, is always like, we got upgraded. We're going to Prague. Now we're going to the opera. And J.B. Smoove is like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. We're just having a trip, you know?
Right.
He's great. He's great.
And he even goes up to Brad afterward and he's like, I'm gonna do a cool teacher thing right now. Stop taking pictures of people in the bathroom. Like that's
yeah,
weird.
doesn't he say something? He's like, I don't know why you do it, but it's weird. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah. So
I like those comedy elements because those were the comedy elements that were not very I don't want to say immature, but like not like high schooler-ish. Like there's a lot of high schooler comedy with the kids, of course, you know? Like in the start of the second movie, you have the whole thing where Peter's like, I'm going to do this with MJ and I'm going to buy her this necklace and we're going to the Eiffel Tower and like step 1, 2, 3 and all that stuff. And then, Ned is responding very proactively and very supportively. And then he's like, don't forget step 7. Don't do any of that stuff. And I'm just like, oh, ha ha ha. The teacher even, Martin Starr, puts the camera on the railing of the dock, takes a picture of himself, and it's like, oh boy, we're gonna see it fall. Oh, it almost falls, but he catches it, and I'm just sitting here, and I'm like, okay, how many seconds is it gonna take for him to actually drop the camera? And then it's like 4, and it's like, good for you, Marvel. You set up a joke and did a quick, subversion of it, and then made the same fucking joke you were gonna make anyway. That's the stuff that grates on me big time in these movies.
Definitely, and that's like the I guess the formula that I was talking about with the Marvel jokes.
Yes.
There's always that like setups subversion but not really subversion joke. It was funny like the first couple times it happened. And then it was like, they were like, the audience laughs at this. Let's do it always.
Yeah, and I really want to talk about this. This is the thing, because I feel like a lot of my friends, you guys, our cinema audience, even the people who are involved in this podcast, they know I hate the Marvel movies. They know I hate the MCU. I don't think I've ever really gotten to explain why. It's exactly what you just explained, Ben. And further, I think it is what I've started to call the Marvel-itis of things. It's not like Marvel invented this. This has been done in a lot of other formats, specifically like comedic talk shows about politics, like the Colbert Report and the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, stuff like that, late night shows. It all boils down to a simple formula that is, we can't go more than a few minutes without making a joke. So in these Marvel movies, and of course I will talk about some examples, I'm sure, from these Spider-Man ones, you'll have some action or you'll have some serious emotional weight going on, but that can't last longer than 5 minutes. As soon as the movie starts to hit the 4-minute mark of things being too serious, the movie starts to sweat and convulse and says, we need to make a joke because we need to make sure people are having fun while they're watching these movies. And I think that's my big problem with the MCU. I think these movies are very basic. I think they're very vacuous, but they are structured in such a way that when somebody leaves the theater or finishes watching the movie, they're going to go, yeah, I had a pretty good time because I remember laughing through most of it. And you're laughing through most of it because they've put a certain level of density of jokes that keeps you engaged. This is the same reason I really cannot stand Last Week Tonight with John Oliver for years. We could do a whole episode on, there was an episode where he lied about something in the actuarial community, and that was a big deal for me with insurance policies and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into that now. But these political commentary shows, like Last Week with John Oliver, they will give you 2 to 3 minutes of actual facts or actual opinions, and they will always bolster or separate those 2 or 3 minutes with jokes. And by the time you finish watching the program, you go, yeah, I kind of agree with what he said. And you don't really think about what was actually stated. You're thinking about the fact that it was punctuated with something that made you feel good, made you laugh. It was funny. And I think the Marvelitis of movies in general, or programs in general, is a detriment to our society. It's basically saying, hey, if I want to have a debate, I'm going to win because I can make good points while making you laugh. When really, certain things should be able to do that without the constant density of laughter, if that all makes sense to you guys. Ben, I think we've gotten this a little bit before on the Patreon, but the MCU is really where I started to gravitate towards this idea. The constant just reminder that we are watching something fun. And movies don't need to do that, but they do it because it's the formula, because people will get their asses back in seats to see this movie.
Well, and that's one of the things that like the DC animated universe completely has over any other comic book movie, collection, is that they don't rely on any kind of jokes or humor. Like they can have like a very good dark movie.
Sure.
And then if there's an occasional joke in it because the Joker says something funny, like that's whatever. But the movie doesn't rely on those jokes to keep its momentum. And and that's something that I think makes those movies fantastic, and why I think the DC animated universe will probably have the best comic book content forever until other people figure out they don't need to do these like gimmicky attention getters. But again, it kind of comes down to like, who is their desired audience, and the desired audience is not comic book fans. Mm-hmm. The desired audience is everybody. Like they want everybody to want to watch these movies.
Absolutely.
And it's like they want to make money, and I can't fault them for that. But if they and to some degree I still enjoy them despite my kind of complaints about the formulaicity. Do we have a word for that? Of their jokes.
Formulicity?
Sure, the formulicity of their jokes. I still kind of like these movies anyway, but it's in spite of those things, not because of them. Whereas I'm more interested in the actual comic book villain superhero interactions and stories and stakes.
Yeah.
Whereas instead of being primarily motivated by the chuckle moments.
I'm so glad you bring up the DC animated movies. Like the great example that we've mentioned a bunch, Ben. We love Under the Red Hood. The jokes in that movie are messed up, I'll take one with you and the kid, and then one with me and the kid, and one with me and the crowbar, one of our favorite jokes from that movie. But it's like, it's showing you how fucked up the situation is. Whereas in the MCU, they almost reverse it to keep that levity. Well, you'll have like this big fight scene going on, or you'll have this emotional moment where like Peter's like losing his mind because he doesn't know what's real or what's not, and that type of thing. And I don't know, Happy Hogan will like fart and drop a sandwich. It's not the same thing. It's not adding to the tension, it's cutting the tension, and it's so annoying to me in the Marvel movies.
Sure. And I mean that's obviously a little bit of an exaggeration of what they do, but you're not wrong that there's
I couldn't find what happened because I wrote one example down in my 6 pages of notes, but I couldn't find it, so I said farts and drops a sandwich.
So the one thing, like the one I remember that I think bothered me the most is the whole like Captain America watch your language bit in whatever movie that was, and I was just like, shut the fuck up. Like don't get me wrong, self-referential humor is some of the best humor, but stop it. Like this isn't funny.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So like I said, I like the Marvel movies in spite of, not because of those things.
Fair. I don't know, Zach, what do you think about the Marvelitis I've described? I know it's something we've gotten it before, maybe not directly in this way, but you know how much I hate that let's make a point and bolster it with a joke and people will like it more type of thing, or connect to it more, whatever you want to call it.
Oh God! But again, I'm trying to think of what to me that became very egregious it was always baked into the pie, but it went over the top. I want to say like in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yes.
It was like I said, like the first Iron Man has its moments, but a lot of that's like writing off like Robert Downey Jr.'s just comedic timing. And then like maybe it went back even to the first Thor, where like all he does is get hit by cars in that movie, and it's a joke.
Sure.
And then like that was the weird thing about like Marvel back like in the early days, in that like, and then you have the first Captain America, which is a pretty, I don't want to call it stoic because that's the wrong word, but it's pretty like even keeled, and that like it has its moments of levity. Like we watched Tommy Lee Jones eat a steak, and then like once again we go back into like the Avengers, and Avengers is like, as much as like Joss Whedon is a dirty like word now, he does a pretty solid job of balancing like the quips with like actual story momentum. And
Why
then
is Joss Whedon a dirty word? What do I not know?
He molested molested everybody.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the easiest way to say it.
The most recent. Yeah. Okay. I think you were about to tell the exact same story I was to Ben. The most recent Joss Whedon thing was that like, Sarah Michelle Gellar and most of the cast of Buffy the Vampire Slayer were actively trying to keep Joss Whedon out of a room with Michelle Trachtenberg because he was known to be a predator. And Michelle Trachtenberg was like, what, like 13, 14, 15?
Yeah,
when that show was being
not of
filmed.
age.
Yeah. And so that's the last thing I heard. And where people were like, yeah, we had to literally like plan out our days so they would never be in the same room together so we could protect her. And it's like, that's fucking wild.
Isn't Michelle Trachtenberg also in Thor?
That's Kat Dennings you might be thinking of.
Okay. Who is she in Buffy?
Ooh, that's a good question. Michelle Trachtenberg, I will always know as the girl from Eurotrip, if anybody remembers.
Is Michelle Trachtenberg the sister, or is that Allison Flanagan?
Allison Flanagan's just a friend.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it's her sister, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, she's
that sounds
Dawn
right.
Summers is who she plays.
Okay,
in
all
Buffy.
right. So she's Buffy's sister.
But the point being is that like it became more and more egregious over time, where everything has to be equipped.
Yeah.
And I think it was the Robert Downey Jr. thing, where like even like God, like in Civil War, where he introduces Spider-Man, it's not just simply like Spider-Man like coming out doing his thing. It's under ruse, and then like it's like a goddamn joke. I'm like, do we need that? And he's not even wearing like his like cute little like hoodie and like ski masks like goggles costume. It's like he's wearing like a super suit. I'm like okay.
I don't get the under ruse thing. I thought that
it's
was
a quip.
Stupid.
Quipping. Everything is a quip now.
That is not a quip.
Isn't it cute, Ben? He's calling the guy in a onesie under. Isn't that clever? Shove the popcorn into your mouth, you piece of trash. That's what that line is telling you.
I to be honest, I didn't even remember it. So when I saw it like reiterated in these movies, I was like, did that happen?
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like I would have made fun of that. It's like they're really throwing like what, underwear humor at us?
How many people do you think, if you were to poll people coming out of the theater that opening weekend, what percentage do you think got the Underoos reference? Was it above or below 1%?
That's a reference to something other than just underwear?
But that's what it is, though. It's like think about it. Like Underoos haven't been a thing like in culture for what, 25, 30 years now?
Yeah, Underoos was a product that had superhero logos on it, like in what, the 80s, I think?
Yeah, or even 70s, I want to say, like Batman.
Okay.
And that's the thing, like he's making an underwear reference. Like it's kind of like, oh God, like making a thing about like, oh, I'm trying to think, like, what, Calvin Klein underwear and Back to the Future? It's like that same tier of, like, underwear reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tune into Cinemati's next week as we try to differentiate underwear references in media.
Okay, I have to actually read this. This is from the Wikipedia page for Underoos, which gives you the whole history of what the hell they are. In the In Pop Culture section, one paragraph says, actress Gwyneth Paltrow, who plays the Marvel character Pepper Potts, had mentioned in interviews she was, quote, definitely not a comic book reader, end quote, but her brother was. Paltrow says she was in quotes, exposed to Marvel superheroes because of her brother, as he had Spider-Man underoos and Spider-Man sheets at a young age. This literally might be why that line is in the movie.
Oh, God.
That is wild.
I thought underoos was just a term for, like, generic underwear. I didn't realize it was a brand.
Yeah, it's a brand.
It isn't. I think Ben's right, though. I think it's like...
It became
it's
like Band-Aid. How the hell did we just jinx each other over Skype? How did that just happen, Zach?
Yeah, well, how did you guys? Yeah, how did you both come up with the same example of that? Because like I definitely came up like I was thinking Velcro.
Oh, okay.
It's just applicable.
Zach and I had Band-Aids on the brain for some reason.
Ben's like Band-Aids.
Or like jacuzzis or Sea-Doos. Like, there's so many example Band-Aids, and not one I ever think of.
Nice.
Can we talk about Gwyneth Paltrow in the last like 14 seconds of this movie? And yet she's like third build.
Oh, yeah, I did see that she was high up there, and it turns out that she has one scene, and from what I've read, in multiple interviews after filming that scene, she thought it was for a different movie. Like, there was some interview I found where they were like, can you tell us about your scene in Spider-Man Homecoming? And she goes, what? I'm not in that movie. And they're like, no, you definitely are. And she's like, no. And she had to like be explained what she filmed for that movie.
Okay. To be in Gwyneth Paltrow's defense, like I have heard this from other Marvel actors. I know like it's Anthony Mackie's in Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And like he's like in that party sequence, and he's like, yeah, like I just showed up to filming one day, and like I was given like my lines, and I did it. And they did not explain to me like the context, because like I'm thinking about like everybody forgets with like the schedule these movies have been on now for like a decade. That like when they started filming like like Captain America the first one and Thor, it was like 2010, and like think about it, like we get like a Captain America or a Thor movie like every like 2-3 years. There was an Avengers movie, or they're doing something like a cameo appearance in this, like Captain America.
Sure.
And so like I kind of don't blame these actors. Like it's fun. Isn't fun to dunk on Gwyneth Paltrow? Yes, like she's an easy target, but like at the same time, like all this is shrouded in secrecy. It's not like she's reading like a binder, and on like the front cover it says Spider-Man Homecoming script, release date July 2017. Like that's where I'm willing to like be like, okay, like she's a human being. She's just like
Paltrow is a saint. Don't you say a negative thing about her.
I didn't say anything negative of the Star of Bounce, also starring Ben Affleck.
Yes. I know what you're saying, Zach, and now I'm a little scared to get into it. I don't know if Ben really loves Gwyneth Paltrow. I was gonna say she didn't know what movie she was in because she's so high on her own holistic medicine. Ben, have you seen the Netflix show that she did about like every episode is like a different holistic medicine where she's like, everybody go do this, and she never does them herself? Have you heard of this?
Oh God, no, I haven't.
Oh, it is so offensive. I've seen like 1 or 2 of the episodes, and one of them is like, oh, there's this guy, and he says that if you get really good in like, diving in 0-degree water, it's going to change your life, and you might, it's like you won't get hypothermia. It's like taking a refreshing shower. And there's a whole episode about this, and I like look into it, and I'm like, is this a real thing? And it's like, most people who have worked with this guy have died of hypothermia. And the show is like actively like, no, this is good. Like, you got to act like every day, like get into ice water bath for 30 seconds, then 35, then 40. And it's like, acclimate yourself to it. And if you do any research, it's like, no, this is bullshit. Everybody needs to stop it. People are dying. She sucks. God. She sucks. I don't know if we'll ever do the Goop show on this podcast, but that would be a wild ride.
I did not know about this. I probably honestly just think she's pretty.
Yeah, she's not bad looking. She's just a fucking nut job.
That's par for the course.
It's actually called the Goop Lab. It's the name of the show I'm talking about. It's actually called the Goop Lab.
Cool.
That's a terrible name. Other characters that I wanted to mention, because there's some tiny parts in here, and Gwyneth Paltrow was a good pull. I probably would not have remembered to bring that up, but not a tiny part, something that I have to talk about in Spider-Man Homecoming that was kind of ruinous to the movie for me. I'm going to say this as nicely as possible. I wanted to bully Ned Ned is a loser. I wanted to punch him in the face so many instances in this movie. I really hated the character of Ned. Question for you guys, from what I read in my research, is it true that this is pretty much a wholly original character? Of course, they might have pulled some inspiration from some comic book material, but from what I was reading, Ned is kind of his own thing for the MCU. Is that right?
My understanding is that is correct.
Okay.
The same is true with the MJ character. They kept the same initials, but her name is like Michelle Jordan or something.
Yeah. Which we'll get to Zendaya. I got to talk about Zendaya. But man, in Homecoming, I could not stand Ned. Like, Ned was, I don't want to say stupid, because of course he's like a god-level programmer at some point in the movie, but before we even know that about him, he is basically there to make laughs. He's a laugh machine. He's going to say something innocent and stupid and pure that in the high school setting is going to be funny. But then, when the movie needs him to be, oh, I'm a genius-level programmer, he can do that too. The character's so disjointed, or lopsided, I guess I should say. I couldn't stand it.
I don't know. It's pretty common for people who are intelligent to not be socially savvy. So, I don't...
You're not wrong there, but also, I mean, like, I think it gets back to what I was saying about the Marvelitis. Like, his character was, oh, when we need him to be serious, he can do everything he can do on a computer that's going to help Spider-Man. But if we've gone 2 minutes without a joke and he's in the scene, let's give it to him. I thought that it was pretty vacuous. And also, kind of, from the second movie, doesn't that, like, those social issues kind of just work out in the wash because he falls in love in Europe immediately type of thing? But I don't know, Ned just rubbed me the wrong way, absolutely. I don't know, Zach, what did you think about Ned as this sidekick?
Well, like, Ned is based off, like, the Miles Morales character of Gonka Lee. If you look up that character, Gonka Lee, he is not, like, 100%, but you can tell he's, like, an amalgamation of, like, that character, like a bunch of other just, like, side characters in Spider-Man lore. My understanding of the OG, like, Sony like Marvel deal from like 2015 is that they, like, when they made that deal, all these characters are like exclusive to the Disney Sony deal. So, like, if they were ever to end that partnership, pretty much the only character that Sony could use would be Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and not even this particular Spider-Man, like, oh god, Iron Man Jr. But, like, MJ would disappear, Ned would disappear, this version of Flash Thompson, like, it's all exclusive to this deal. That's why she's not Mary Jane and why she's MJ. She's just initials. That's my understanding of the Sony Disney deal. Is that, like, if it's all these characters, like Marissa Tomei, Aunt May, exclusive to this deal. Okay. So, like, if they were to end this like partnership, pretty much Tom Holland could be Spider-Man, but this particular instance of him as, like, more of a tech person would have to be dissolved.
I've heard of stuff like that before, so that makes some sense. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the reason why these characters are so weirdly specific.
So,
like, even Vulture, like if something were to happen, like, Vulture would disappear. I don't know when, like, God, this was like 2 years ago, like right after Far From Home came out. There was like this big thing of like, oh, Sony's pulling like Spider-Man out of, like, the continuity. I don't know if any sort of deal was like obviously it was renegotiated, because clearly Venom's being brought into this along with all these other, like, legacy characters. So clearly the deal has changed since last time, like, I read anything on it. But that's why, like, Ned is very like this, like, that's why you don't get any of this, the clear-cut characters from, like, typical Spider-Man comics continuity.
Right. You're not getting a Harry Osborn or like the standard Flash Thompson that's a jock. That
they're very stylized versions of these characters. Very specific. Yeah. There's nothing generic about them.
Absolutely. Tony Revolori, that we actually talked about 2 weeks ago, because I never knew he played Flash Thompson in these movies. He is not what anybody would think if they know anything about Flash Thompson. I was even kind of shocked that, he shows up in the first movie, Homecoming, and Tony Revolori's, he's the rich snob kid who's making fun of Peter Parker. And then they're all just on the academic decathlon team because he has to be in the movie more and that type of thing. And I don't know, it felt really forced for me, the whole bullying aspect. Like, it started off good, but then putting him on the academic decathlon team, along with MJ, she's not Mary Jane, MJ, Zendaya in this movie, I was all like, okay, they just didn't want his bully to leave him, that type of thing. And I thought that was a little forced, but I get that he needs a bully throughout. And also, if that didn't happen, we wouldn't get that great line. Tony Revolori saying, I know when Branzino's fresh, and that was not fresh.
Well, I mean, and that's a reference to the Andrew Garfield movies, right? Like,
from what at least 6 IMDb trivia facts will tell you, yes, it's a reference to the dinner scene with the Branzino.
Which I thought that was, like, I guess, kind of a cute way to reference that those movies existed.
Yeah, it's a nice little head nod. I was not against that, absolutely, at all. Tony Revolori's fine, though. We got to talk about Zendaya. I mean... Well,
okay, so can we talk about the fact that Tony Revolori looks like the child of one of the people in the Andrew Garfield movies? Like, there's that dude in the limousine and the lizard's trying to attack him, and, like, they look like they're related.
Oh, okay.
I mean, obviously, they're probably not, but... I don't even remember his name or if he's an important character.
Sure.
He's in a limo.
I did not pick up on this. Maybe I'll have to do a side-by-side image to put in the show notes. But I'll have to look into that, Ben. That did not catch my attention.
Well, and I've only seen them not on screen together, so maybe they don't look that similar when they're actually next to each other.
Sure.
But just from like the small amount of time I saw them, I was like, that looks like just like Flash Thompson.
I will have to look into that, Ben. I didn't catch that at all. Before I talk about Zendaya, just MJ in general, in the first movie, I don't know, did you guys get what I got? The vibes when she says, oh, call me MJ at the end of the first movie is exactly the same thing that Joseph Gordon-Levitt does in The Dark Knight Rises when he's revealed to be Robin. Isn't almost the same exact scene? Because I think, I didn't write it down exactly, so, feel free to correct me, but isn't it something like, oh, Zendaya's character is Michelle, and she goes, call me MJ, or something like that, right at the end of the movie, right?
That sounds right. I don't remember the details, but...
Well, okay, it's that cute little, like, wink at the audience.
Yes. It's the Robin thing from Dark Knight Rises, where he goes, yeah, my name is not Robin, not the Boy Wonder, and they go, that's not appearing in here. He goes, oh, maybe try Robin the Boy Wonder, and it's just like, nobody cares about that. Like, we get it, Like, if he was supposed to be Robin, everybody who has 2 brain cells picked that up the whole movie. They didn't need some, like, convoluted series of events to tell you that they're Robin, and I felt the MJ thing was the same way.
Okay, I don't want this to become a Dark Knight Rises conversation, but like I'll always find that like bit hilarious at the end of that film because his name isn't goddamn Robin, his name's Dick Grayson. I'm like,
oh yeah. His name is actually Robin in that, right? Like,
yeah. It's like that's the fun thing about. I guess I kind of like that ending of. Again, I like the Dark Knight Rises, like blemishes and all, but like I love at the end where you're like you should use your like what she say like your legal name more often, Robin. And like it's not it's such like an afterthought. I swear to God they ADR'd it. I swear I didn't know I could go take a leak one day and like a studio exec just like quick somebody get the secretary and have her record this quick. No one will notice.
But they should have had his name be Dick Grayson or any of the other Robins.
But then you can't have the cute little reveal at the end.
Exactly. That's what I think they wanted that.
They want to have their cake and eat it too,
at
Ben.
the end. Yeah. And that whole that he was Robin and that he was Dick Grayson. He might pick up the mantle later on. It's the fan service, but I think we all have to remember the scene is so fucking convoluted because at the end of the movie, Joseph Gordon-Levitt has to go because he's part of the police force or something, and he has to go and actually deal with the bureaucracy of like Gotham coming back together as a society and as like a structured society type of thing. And so he shows up. And he gives him a name that is not his legal name. And the administrator goes, oh, you should try your real fucking name. The scene is so forced into the movie. It's wild. Like, if you're a cop and you're like, oh, I gotta go pick up my paycheck, you're not gonna give him your nickname. You're gonna give him your actual name. And then when the woman asks for his actual name, he doesn't say it. He hands her his ID. Like, the movie is trying so hard to obfuscate that he's like, oh, I like the name Robin. It's offensive. I hate that part of The Dark Knight Rises, Zack. Which I like for the most part, to be honest.
I also hated it, but I hated it from the standpoint of like Robin's name has never been Robin.
Yeah, well, yeah, that too.
Like Robin's name was Robin because he was a circus performer, and that was his like trapeze artist name.
Yes, absolutely.
Jason Todd
is a Robin. Yes, that's not the circus one.
He is a Robin.
Jason Todd, I think, is the street thug that Batman takes in because he stole Batman's tires. If I remember right.
I just know that Chris O'Donnell at one point swooped in like a Robin off screen in the Joel Schumacher movie Batman Forever, and that's why he's called Robin.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the continuity you're looking at,
Yeah. But still, I mean, this MJ thing screamed to me this same contrived inclusion of a fan service nod to the audience, which I kind of get. Honestly, I mentioned before I knew a lot about Homecoming going into it with cultural osmosis. I thought she was playing Mary Jane. I honestly thought that. When I start watching the movie, of course, I realize that's not the case. But from all the memes and images and people talking to me about the MCU, I thought Zendaya was just straight up Mary Jane. But she's just this proto-Mary Jane, I guess? Who cares? She has no character anyway. That's what I want to segue into. She has no personality.
But this is the weird thing. In the first film, she's playing like baby woke anarchist, which is like this like weird like contrarian. And then in the second film, like it's not even the same character. She's like that character has nothing in common with the one from like the previous film.
I wouldn't even give it as much as, you know, the anti. However you described it with some very eloquent words. I saw Zendaya's character. Yeah, I saw Zendaya's character as LOL so quirky girl. Like, that's all her personality is that anytime she has to be in a scene, she just says something that's, you know, like, oh, wow, isn't it weird that a girl would say that? And I thought that carried over to the second movie. I mean, in the first movie, she's non-existent, I think. In the second movie, she becomes more of a
She
character.
Protests.
She says she protests, right?
Oh, that's right. He said protesting is patriotic.
That whole thing where she's like, you know, we're going to the Washington Monument, and what do we know about the Washington Monument? It was built by slaves? And the movie like tries to have this little weird moment, and it's like, what does this matter at all?
Rob, maybe John Watts, maybe watch a certain Wonder shows in.
No.
Where?
No. John Watts does not know what Wonder Chosen is, and if he ever saw it, he probably turned it off and contacted his congressman.
Who built the pyramids, Rob?
Slaves. They built everything. Slaves. But
slaves built the pyramids. Slaves built the Parthenon. Slaves built America. Slaves, this is your song. Thank you. Slaves. Thank you. Slaves. Thank you. Slaves. Slaves. This is your song, thank you.
But no, I mean, I saw no characterization in MJ, in Zendaya's character at all. Like in the first movie, she's a placeholder for the tease that she's MJ at the end. In the second movie, she's the love interest. I'm kind of glad that she gets put in the forefront so we can sideline Ned, and Ned is a lot less annoying in the second movie. But in the second movie, then, she's just, like, so bland and empty. She's there just to be, like, the reflection for Spider-Man and things like that. I don't know. I saw no value to her as a female character in any way, shape, or form.
So, in the second movie, her whole personality is that she likes dark things.
Yes.
Like, it's like, oh, the Black Dahlia murder.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
So I wouldn't. I mean, she's like a very like one-dimensional high schooler who hasn't really figured out who they are, and then the fact that Peter Parker likes her doesn't really make a ton of sense because we've not gotten any indication that Peter Parker is interested in dark stuff. He
just likes this girl. Yeah.
So I don't know that I can get on board with like that. She was kind of a strange.
And I'm with you, Ben. When like that, you're right. Saying that she likes this dark stuff. You know, I would say even in the first movie as well, when she's saying things, you know, she's being very anti or contrarian and things of that nature. But that's what I see as just the LOL so quirky. Like she's basically just like a meme type of thing. Like, wouldn't it be funny if somebody said the total opposite of what everybody was thinking? Like, who would go to DC and be like, okay, kids, we're going to the Washington Monument. Raises their hand. That was built by slaves. Like, who would do that? You know, that's a very movie contrived personality to me, and I wish we got something fleshed out.
I don't know. That felt like that's the thing though. Is that like I remember, like, obviously we've talked about a lot, like, again, this came out in 2017, but like the younger generation's trying to be like edgy and woke.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Like,
so I was just about to bring up the same thing, Rob. Like you know some of the people we interacted with in Athens. You're telling me that someone who shall not be named wouldn't just be like, oh, but that was slavery.
Oh, no. Don't get me wrong. I totally believe that. Those are people that I have dealt with in real life that I dislike, and when I deal with them in movies, I also dislike. I'm not saying this character's unreasonable. It is grating to me that they are so one-dimensional in that way.
Okay, I thought you were suggesting that she wasn't realistic.
You're absolutely right. I'm glad, Ben, you said he who should not be named, because we could tell the story of, someone coming into a room of people and starting to talk about the last time they got pulled over for cops just to say their race, basically. No, yeah, they exist, and they bother me in every way, shape, and form.
Hello, fellow white people.
Oh, God. Yeah. No, so it's not unrealistic. It's just I want more dimensionality from my love interest character, because I think that's a big problem I had with from last week. Gwen Stacy is so one-dimensional, but they focus so much on that love story that it bothers me. Here, I think MJ, Zendaya, is one-dimensional, and then they don't focus on the love story as much that it comes off as more annoying to me, that it's almost an afterthought in these movies. More so the first one, of course.
But that's the weird thing, is that, like, she doesn't, like, even in the second movie, like, and maybe this is the thing where it's like, it feels like my opinion on like the romance and Attack of the Clones, where I'm just like, oh yeah, it's how an awkward 20-year-old male who's like celibate would like behave around like a pretty woman.
Sure.
Like like Tom Holland's relationship with Zendaya in these movies, like, not that it makes sense, but like it's weird because like we're so used to like the Peter Mary Jane of like Raimi Spider-Man, where like it feels so larger than life. It's very grandiose. So to see it so like, oh God, like small, like relatively small, that is, it feels almost like hollow. But I don't think that's the movie's fault. I think that's more just me as the audience. Because like I think the romance works, but like it doesn't feel like they have any chemistry when they're together.
Yeah, 100% I'm with you there. No chemistry at all. And I think that's because Zendaya is playing it like she's on like sedatives or Valium or something. She's so reserved in her scenes.
Well, this is something I want to ask you guys. Like, I remember the first time I was ever like introduced to Zendaya, and Rob's gonna like eat this up, is through the Disney Channel TV show Shake It Up, which is about people dancing on like a Chicago TV show.
Perfect.
Like, imagine like American Bandstand.
I think Zach, whatever name you just said you came up with, the Disney Channel show you're referring to was called People Dance for Zack. It was a show made just for Zack.
But this is the thing, like, I remember her from that. It was like her and Bella Thorne.
Yes.
And then like Bella Thorne like went Miley Cyrus like route, like just went bonkers. And then like, but Zendaya like stayed on the Disney Channel and then like started like built like, I think she had like a very brief music career for a while.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And then like she became like, oh God, Hollywood like teenage royalty.
She's in that like spy show, right? She's
on Disney Channel.
Disney Channel spy show. That's when I first heard about her. Yeah.
And that's the thing, but like Zendaya has never proved her worth other than like the media has told us to like her. Like, not that she's bad. I don't think she's ever been bad in anything. It's more just like she's doing what she's told, which doesn't really benefit her. Ideally,
yes. Yeah,
we've been told to like her, and that's why, like whether it be these movies or Dune, it's like she's there solely because like the market research has told the producers, if you plug her in at this element, you will get X response from the audience.
Yeah,
I actually like my first interaction with Zendaya that I remember is from The Greatest Showman, which is
that too. There you go. I forgot about that.
That's right. Yeah, me too.
That's what I mean. Like, but isn't she Zac Efron's love interest in that?
Yeah.
But like, okay, I've never seen that, Ben. So have you seen that, Rob?
No. My question for Ben, if he has any recollection of it, does Zendaya emote in that movie? Does she show emotions? Oh, gee, so that's just her shtick, I guess. Because
that's what I was gonna ask. Because I don't like she's a little bit like a blank slate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that might even be. the whole this person's so generic that you can paint yourself onto them for the teenage girl crowd. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that as a thing.
I could see that from the Spider-Man perspective of like trying to get the girls in the audience go like, don't you want to fuck Spider-Man, that type of
Basically,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we can't deny that that's an element of all of these movies, that people are into the masked, the hero of New York,
Well, that's their constant. Like, dial this back. Because I know, when Far From Home came out, I had, teenage family members that, went to go see this. Were never into Marvel stuff and went to see this because of, the Tom Holland thing. Was that, Andrew Garfield, we all know, was attractive, 10 years ago. Really was, was a heartthrob. I know I was too young, but do either of you remember Tobey Maguire being seen as a sex symbol in the early 2000s?
No, not at all. I think I was too young as well. And we mentioned it in that episode, him being a member of the Pussy Posse. That was before our time. Yep.
But that's what I mean, though. But that was because he was he was part of that crowd.
Yeah.
But when it came to pop culture, was he? I don't think Tobey Maguire was ever a sex symbol, though.
Not that I can remember at all.
Well, and Tom Holland was basically a nobody before he was Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, he was in that movie with The Impossible, the flood, what was it, the Indonesian tsunami movie?
Yeah, he was in stuff, but he didn't pop until the Marvel the MCU stuff. Well,
he popped in the right crowds. Obviously becoming Spider-Man puts you on a whole new level.
Sure,
it's like being James Bond. But I guess he was around though. He was a name. If you were aware of because I remember when before he was cast, this was 2015. It was him. Asa Butterfield.
Yes.
Dylan O'Brien. Is that his name? The guy from the Maze Runner movies?
Yep. He was in talks. He just showed up in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm this season. I had to look this up. In the Heart of the Sea was the Ron Howard movie he's in that I couldn't remember the title of, but he was in that. I'm sure he got some notoriety from being in a Ron Howard movie.
Dylan O'Brien or Tom Holland?
Tom Holland. Sorry, Tom Holland.
Well, that was 2017. That was after this, wasn't it? After Homecoming?
No, 2015. He's in a Ron Howard movie before he's in Civil War. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, it was the idea and it was the idea that he was more of not the dark horse, but apparently from what I remember was Sony really wanted him. And Marvel wanted somebody else. I forget who Marvel wanted. I think they were both British actors.
Yes.
And Sony's the one that really leaned into Tom Holland. And Marvel was okay, technically it's their property. They can do we can obviously voice our opinions, but it's their decision. We really don't have any objections to him. That was the narrative back in 2015.
Well, the thing I'm aware of is that Chris Hemsworth helped him land the role.
Ooh, okay.
I never heard that, but based on him being in the heart of the sea, I could see that.
Sure, just to connect them. Yeah, something like that. I was looking into that. I know that Tom Holland had done some theater previously, so he had that dance background, and Marvel loves to pick up dancers so they can do their fight scenes in a reasonable amount of time. But Ben, do you have any more information on the Hemsworth thing with Tom Holland?
Well, just so this is from NikkiSwift.com. I've heard it from elsewhere, but this is just the thing that came up when I searched it.
Sure.
Thor confessed in 2019 ET interview that he helped Holland land the role of Spider-Man. We worked on In the Heart of the Sea together, obviously, then through Avengers, and as they were casting him for Spider-Man, I did what I could do and made a call. Hemsworth told ET. He's one of the most talented people I've worked with, and has such a big heart and appreciation. We have a great friendship. It's a good mutual respect.
Well, right on. Okay, good for them. I mean, good for Tom Holland. Of course, Hemsworth at that point is well off to the races with his career. So, okay, right on.
Yeah, so apparently Hemsworth really liked working with him in Heart of the Sea, and there we go.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I have, like I said earlier, my problems with Tom Holland are with him as an actor, because I don't believe him as an adult, which they're clearly going to try and, make us when he's going to play Nathan Drake in the Uncharted movie, which is fucking weird to me. But, I mean, after the Spider-Man stuff, I think you told me you saw it, Zach. Chaos Walking, him and Daisy Ridley.
Oh, God, yeah.
God. From what I know, that movie was like a travesty. Is that right?
The rumor, that's why I wanted to see that movie, because the rumor for how many years was it was literally unwatchable. That's how it was unreleasable.
Yeah,
that was the rumor. And it's generic YA nonsense. He does the exact same thing he does in Spider-Man here, where he's just it almost reminds me of like a blending of his Peter Parker in the Jacob Tremblay thing of there's a girl. He has like that like that nervous like jitter. That's very, very off-putting, and Daisy really just kind of like does that thing where she stares into the void.
I remember that trailer coming out and everybody making fun of Daisy Ridley looking into the camera type of thing.
Yeah, it's the worst type of cinema. It's forgettable. Like I couldn't tell you a single thing about that movie.
Okay, that's fair. I've never seen it. Ben, have you seen Chaos Walking, the movie where whenever men have thoughts, they are portrayed for the rest of the world to see them, but for women this does not happen? Is that the basic premise, Zach? Am I right about that?
More or less.
Okay. Have you seen it?
I wanted to see it, but I have not.
Okay. That's like I remember that being like Tom Holland, they're saying, I think this, Chaos Walking and Cherry were the two movies where they're like, look what these superheroes can do, outside of the superhero genre, that type of thing. And of course, because Daisy Ridley being from Star Wars, she's in Chaos Walking as well. And it turns out nobody cares about those movies because they just want to see lightsabers and spider webs. They don't want to see heady sci-fi dramas with people we know as other things. So I don't think I'll ever watch that movie. Before we get off of Zendaya, or Zendaya, which brings me to my bigger point, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sure we could look it up, but let's call on the rule that if Zendaya or Zendaya hears this, she has to come on the podcast to correct us. Zach, and I think Ben, if he remembers, they know that I'm aware of Zendaya because of Euphoria, the HBO show. If Zendaya ever came on this podcast based off of, the call to action I just gave her about telling us how to pronounce her name, the first question I would ask her, second. First question would be like, well, how do you pronounce your name? Second question, I swear, would be, what was it like to work with Sydney Sweeney? I have zero interest in Zendaya as an actress, but Sydney Sweeney on Euphoria, give me those deets. I just had to get that out there. I don't think I had anything else about Zendaya, but I have to mention she's worked with Sydney Sweeney, and gotta love her for that. She's 1 degree away from Sydney Sweeney. Some other just quick moments quick characters I wanted to mention. I did not realize this until I looked it up afterwards. The voice of Karen, the AI in the spider suit in Homecoming.
Jennifer
Connelly! Good for Jennifer Connelly getting back into the MCU after the Ang Lee Hulk movie. Good for her.
Do you know why it was Jennifer Connelly? Who's she married to?
Oh, God, I know who she's married to. Oh, this is one of the things I know, but I try to repress because if she's ever single, she should hit me up. Oh, God. No, remind me, Zach. I knew this like 3 days ago, I swear. Paul right.
Bettany,
okay,
who was the original voice of...
Jarvis? Yes.
Yep. There you go, because everything is connected.
Absolutely. Once I read that it was Jennifer Connelly doing the voice, I have to admit to everybody, Ben and Zach and the cinema audience, I was kind of tempted to be like, man, I should go back and watch the Ang Lee Hulk movie again. That is so rare for me to say, out of my own free will, maybe I should check out a superhero movie. Ben, have you seen the Ang Lee Hulk movie? So 2003, the one where Eric Bana plays the Hulk, and Sam Elliott is Thunderbolt Ross, and he's fighting like Hulk poodles and stuff like that. It's stylized with like comic book panels that are really disorienting. Is this ringing a bell?
Yeah, I remember watching it at the drive-in theater in my hometown, and the screen was so dark that you couldn't tell what was going on most of the time.
Okay. That might be something, the only way you guys are ever going to get me to talk about a superhero movie again, whether not a fan request or something that fits into a series, I could probably be convinced to watch the Ang Lee Hulk again, because that movie is wild, and they will never let anybody make anything like that ever again in the history of the universe. But that was great. Jennifer Connelly was good to hear. Logan Marshall Green shows up as the original Shocker, but Michael Keaton kills him off, so he gives the Shocker glove to Bokeem Woodbine. I thought those were great to see. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I wanted to mention, other small moments. I guess the last one would be good old Childish Gambino, Ben, Donald Glover. We have to talk about him. Here's my thing. I know from what I've read that he was included as some character who's supposed to be the uncle of Miles Morales or something. There's some in-universe canon of who he's supposed to be. But just in terms of performance, we get, two scenes with him. One, he's just, like, buying guns from the Vulture. It's real quick near the beginning. But we get a second scene where Spider-Man, interrogates him. When he webs his hand to the trunk of the car and then asks him for information. I thought Donald Glover was so checked out in that scene. Like, he seemed just like Zendaya. I thought he was on, like, sedatives. He was just, like, mumbling through his words. When I really wanted some, like, moment, I wanted it to be like another Hannibal Buress or J.B. Smoove. Like, I wanted Donald Glover to give some oomph to that. And it was really just like, no, I gotta give some exposition, and then my one joke is, like, can you let me free of the web? And Spider-Man's like, it'll be 2 hours, it's fine, or whatever the last button is. I don't know. What'd you think about Donald Glover in that appearance, Ben?
Well, he's checked out. He is checked out. I was definitely getting the impression like he's supposed to be like a kind of low-life criminal.
Yes.
And Miles Morales' uncle is also a criminal, so that does check out that could be what they're going for. But I definitely was getting the impression that he was like supposed to be on drugs.
It definitely comes across that way. You're not wrong.
So like he was in a K-hole or something.
Wouldn't you have loved a line of Childish Gambino saying something like, Spider-Man, I can't deal with this shit. I just did a whole bottle of purple drank or something like that, The codeine's hitting me, Spider-Man. I don't want to deal with your bullshit, something like that. But no, he's just very reserved, and I thought it was kind of like a wasted moment. They could have had a lot more, like, back and forth, like quippiness,
Well, I mean, they had a little bit where he's just like, you're not very good at this, like that kind of thing. But You're right, that they could have taken it further.
Maybe you're right in the sense that the direction was like, oh, Donald Glover, you are this criminal. You're, clearly up to something. Whether I'm not saying, the drugs had to be an impact, but it seemed like John Watts just gave Donald Glover, it was like, hey, we got you in this scene. Just do something. Like, it seemed like they just gave him an improv moment, and it doesn't hit as well as it could if they really refined it.
To be completely honest, if it was an improv moment, it would have been better. Donald Glover
that's a good point.
is
not.
Right. Donald Glover is not somebody who is just going to phone it in for an improv moment.
100%. I've seen him do freestyle live before, and it's amazing. So he has that creativity. You're right. You're right about that.
So this was definitely directed to be this way, and whether that was a good decision or not, it definitely wasn't.
Sure.
Because Donald Glover has so much more to offer. But I don't think that he owns any of the fault for this performance.
Okay, that's fair. I totally know where you're coming from. Other than that, I think through both movies, those are all the characters I wanted to mention. I know actually should throw this in here. We talked about him before, Samuel L. Jackson, who's not Nick Fury in the second movie, it seems. But another great chuckle moment where, Tom Holland as Peter Parker / Spider-Man doesn't want to deal with this Nick Fury stuff. And he's trying to give excuses to Nick Fury about why he can't do this mission. And one of Nick Fury's responses is, bitch, please, you've been to space.
That was an accident.
Yes, I thought that back and forth was great.
You're coming with us.
I'm sorry, did you say Prague? Mr. Fury, this all seems like big time. Huge superhero kind of stuff. And, I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, sir.
Bitch, please, you've been to space.
I know, but that was an accident, sir. Come on, there's got to be someone else you can use.
And that's where I'm like, this is good fun. Like, if you're going to give me comedy moments, at least make them in universe. Don't make them stupid sight gags about a teacher dropping a camera or, some montage of kids getting into kooky trouble on their high school trip. Make it with characters that I know. Like, have Samuel L. Jackson say, bitch, please, you've been to space. Have the knowledge we have as the audience members come into arguments between our main characters. Why is that so hard to ask for?
Sure.
Why is it so hard to do it so densely? Because they do it so sparingly.
And just, you mentioned the Eternals earlier. There's this joke. Joke is not the right word for what it is, but that's how they try to play it in the commercial, where he's like, this table's probably made out of vibranium.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy's like, fall collection, IKEA.
Yep.
Like, it's just like this long pause, and you're like, why? And of course, everyone in the audience, because I saw this at a commercial at a theater, everyone in the audience laughs. I'm like, this is not a joke.
Yep, exactly. But you're right. But that's what I was saying. The Marvelitis of these things. They're throwing it. They're not even, maybe to continue that part. They're not even, in air quotes, jokes anymore. They've gotten to this saturation point of including things that are so tonally different from the action or the emotion that we've been seeing that it almost provokes us to laugh because we have no other way to handle it. I mean, that happened in when I was watching the Spider-Man scenes in Civil War for this recording. You know, I watched that airplane hangar fight. There's a moment in that airplane hangar fight when they not Hawkeye, Anthony Mackie, the flying guy, Falcon like gets Spider-Man away from him, and there's a moment when like Bucky says like, you couldn't have done that sooner, and then there's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moments, like way too many bloated moments that pass, and Anthony Mackie goes, I hate you. And it's like, is this funny, or is it just so tonally different that we're confused how to react to it as an audience? And that's
an interesting question.
Yeah, and so like what you were saying, the IKEA thing, I've seen that trailer too, Ben. I don't think that's funny either. It's almost like the moment you hear that character start speaking, he goes, this table is made out of, you know the rest of the scene. You know the joke, you know the responses. Yes. And the only way they can play with that is by making it take longer. So is it actually funny? Or have they conditioned us to react a certain way to pauses in the momentum of the film? And I kind of think both are bad, but there is a difference between those two things.
Sure, and I definitely think you're on something.
In the Eternals' defense, it might be the only joke in the movie. They need to plug in some levities. They took what they could. I agree with you. The line is garbage, but I don't blame the marketing department.
I don't know. I am fully expecting in the Eternals someone to say they're going to take that moment from the trailer that I hate, where they're like, why didn't you help us with Thanos or the Holocaust or World War I? They don't say Holocaust and World War I, but you guys know what I mean. And I'm expecting in the actual movie, when that question gets asked, like Angelina Jolie is going to say like, I had a dentist appointment. And it's going to be fucking stupid. It's going to be so stupid, but people are going to lose their minds in the theater, and nobody's going to hear the next 6 minutes of dialogue because they're laughing so much. But I don't think it's a laughter response. I think it's they need us to respond. It's like Marvel movies have become just the sitcom audience, like, light thing that says applause, and it's illuminated or not. Like, they know when to tell us when to applaud, and we're just all eating it up.
I don't know about all of us, but
fair.
And like I said, I like these movies in spite of these things, not because of them. But yeah, I definitely with you where they've kind of abused this, and they're using. So Dean Koontz does it to great effect, where he uses things that are like out of the norm to make you feel very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And one of the human responses to discomfort is laughter, and I think that's what you're getting at, is like they're just like they're going so far outside of what we are expecting tonally that our response can be like one of two things, which is to be really uncomfortable or to laugh.
Yes.
And we choose to laugh, as opposed to it actually being funny or like substantive.
Yeah. It's hitting a formula that is, drawing out reactions from the audience, and I guess maybe, to summarize, like, once again, the inherent thing I dislike about that is that writing these movies become writing exercises. Like, I know you and I talked about it years ago, Ben, but we once brainstormed, it would be like, wouldn't it be neat if, like, you were in a writing class and it was like, your assignment is write an episode of Family Guy or write an episode of Law and Order. Those things are so well known and so formulaic that anybody could do that. Family Guy, it's like, okay, I need these cutaway jokes, I need A plot line, B plot line, that type of stuff. It's a screenwriting exercise. Marvel movies have now become that too, where you might have a script and they go, okay, we've hit this many words, need a joke. Hit this many words, need a joke. It's become so formulaic that you could give it as a writing exercise to a first-year film student, and you probably get stuff on par with what we're getting in the theaters. And I don't know, I think that's an issue. I don't think that's fostering creativity. That's leading to repetition and getting in a rut that is creating the same movie over and over and over, which is my big problem with the MCU.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. That is definitely... It could definitely be a year one writing exercise. Mm-hmm. Write a scene from a Marvel movie.
Yes, exactly.
You're gonna have to get to like year 3 before you're writing the whole thing.
Yeah, sure. And you also have to know, that's a good point, Ben. Maybe you can totally imagine, I think anybody could, a first year student doing this, writing like a scene of a Marvel movie, and their teacher grades it, and it comes back to them and says like, you went 6 minutes without a joke. Some points off, It's like you are not there. There's clearly a rubric that someone would have to follow. It's become so formulaic.
Right. That is definitely the vibe that these movies have.
It's the strangest thing to me, I don't like it, but it's just wild to think about.
Well, and that's one thing I can say. Shang-Chi doesn't deviate from this entirely, but it does deviate from a lot of the formulas.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I like about it. It feels original for the Marvel Universe, despite having elements from the Marvel Universe in it.
Gotcha. Okay. Just to get on this tangent, this is something I think you guys mentioned to me briefly, and I've read about it more. They retcon the Iron Man 3 Mandarin in Shang-Chi. Is that true?
I don't know that it's necessarily a retcon, but they do say that like the Mandarin is a name. So basically what they say is Shang-Chi's dad is this villain who has been given many names throughout history.
Okay.
And the Mandarin is one of them. And then the fake Mandarin is somebody pretending to be him.
Okay.
So I don't know that it's
fine.
necessarily retcon.
It's not, yeah. So not so much retcon. It's more of an explanation of the events previously. Okay. That's fair. I don't know. I still think Guy Pearce is the Mandarin. He says that in Iron Man 3. He says, "I am the Mandarin." Right, Zack?
You said you wanted the Mandarin. You're looking right at him. It was always me, Tony. Right from the start. I am the Mandarin.
I am the Mandarin.
I am the Mandarin. Tony, you've been looking for the Mandarin. I am the Mandarin. Love that clip. Okay. I think with Donald Glover out of the way, and I think I've said my part on the MCU, I don't know, any other moments, characters we missed? What do you guys want to dive into with Spider-Man here?
I don't know that there's a ton to dive into, but I do want to mention that in terms of movement of the Spider-Man character, these movies do better than I think any of the other ones have done. Where you get like Spider-Man like jumping in and around things and slinging his web and then going through something and like you get a little bit of his foresight in the fight with the drones, and he like puts a web bridge across these two things and then flies over and comes around the other side and uses that as like a slingshot to shoot him down faster. Like we get like a lot of very what I would call Spider-Man-y movements where we don't get so much of that with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, I'm actually with you. I think the big thing, or in some of the action moments, the Spider-Man action moments in these two movies, it gave me or made me think of when we talked about the first Sandman fight in Spider-Man 3 from Sam Raimi, where Spider-Man was off of his toes. I still love that scene when he tries to escape the Sandman, so he swings around the bus and swings right into another bus. Like, that's awesome. And I'm with you, Ben. In these movies, specifically Far From Home, I kind of love the moment in the drone fight when he gets caught on fire, so he swings himself just to touch the water and put himself out. And I'm like, why can't these movies just be 2 hours of that cool shit, Like, why do I have to wait an hour 45 to get to something that neat?
Sure, and yeah, like that's definitely one of the things that I think these movies really nailed, is like his movements are very, it's just what I want from Spider-Man.
Sure.
He is using his webs. He's using his like quick reflexes to his advantage very well in these fights. And I really appreciate that.
That was great to watch I think for me on the level that you're explaining, but I also kind of thought this was not something that I dove into, and there's probably a Reddit post about this somewhere, but how many times does Tom Holland's Spider-Man punch villains? I know he does it once because he punches Mysterio and breaks the fishbowl helmet at the end of the second movie. But can you guys actually think of one moment other than that where he punches a villain? There's a lot of motion and webbing. There's a lot of actual tactility to Spider-Man. It's not just the Marvel thing of like, oh, I need to beat you up now. Do you guys know what I'm saying? I didn't pick up on a lot of punches, period, which I thought was surprising.
Yeah, he does a lot of like catching you with the web and pulling you in this or that direction. He definitely not so much punching, and that's again that's the Spider-Man I want to see. Like, I'm not interested in Spider-Man because he's strong. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in Spider-Man because he's flexible and fast, and he can like move in ways that people can't move.
Yeah,
like, that's what I want to see.
That's what I was saying before, agreeing with what you said also earlier before, is that like that's why a lot of this stuff with Tom Holland as Spider-Man is interesting. Like, I know I said last week the Andrew Garfield was seriously lacking in action, and then when the action finally happened, it was bogged down in slow motion for half of it, bogged down in CGI nonsense. Here, in these two movies, there is CGI nonsense, and I will admit that in that drone fight at the end of Far From Home, there were swaths of time I had no fucking idea what I was looking at because it was so fast-paced. But when you get a clear establishment of like, oh, here's the enemy, Spider-Man's going to use his powers to beat it, it's so fulfilling. And I'm so glad that it's not just like, oh, I need to punch this dude. And then, to be honest, the one dude he punches, Mysterio, he's the one that gets him back at the end. Like, punching didn't even beat Mysterio. Punching led to him having that video released in the mid-credits scene. So, I don't know. I'm with you, Ben. I really kind of appreciate that.
Well, and we even get the scene where he, like, completely relies on his spider sense.
Yes.
Which they insist on referring to as Peter Tingle.
Oh, God, I hated that.
Yeah, I hated that as well.
Ben, do you know what actually reminded me of? Every time somebody said Peter Tingle in this movie, it reminded me of The Rock saying, "No one's going up my Pinto" in The Rundown. Do you remember that scene from The Rundown?
Not this boy's Pinto.
Not this boy's Pinto. I was like, oh, no. I was like, please stop this.
Swim up my what?
Your Pinto. It'll swim up your ding-dong, and once it gets in, we can't get it out.
Come on! Well, then what?
They have to amputate.
Not this boy's Pinto.
There's even that when I think it's in in Far From Home, when they give him the stealth suit, they're like, "How's the suit?" And he says something like, "It's a little tight around the web shooter." And I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
I don't want to think of a 15-year-old boy's web shooter. Ugh. Anything else? Ben, we're at the end of our main Spider-Man movies. Any other thoughts about comparisons of these movies in general? Like, what do you think now that you've rewatched them all? You know, is your love for Spider-Man diminished or revitalized, I guess?
It's definitely not diminished. And that's in large part because I don't treat Spider-Man from the movies as Spider-Man the property, I guess.
Sure.
Like, I treat Spider-Man from the movies as however they're portraying the property in this moment. But out of all the movies, I still have to say, like, between the first trilogy, the Tobey Maguire, and then Andrew Garfield's a better Spider-Man. Neither of them are a good Peter Parker.
Okay.
Tom Holland's better in both respects. And he's not perfect, but he's better.
Right on.
So I think that's really, that's kind of my take on these Spider-Man properties.
Yeah, perfect. I think I still love me Andrew Garfield the best, but that's biased because I like Andrew Garfield the best as an actor. But I will admit, I've come around to Tom Holland. I do not see him as a child as much as I used to prior to watching these movies. Zach, what do you think? Any moments or thoughts on these Spider-Man stuff? Because I think I've exhausted all of my notes.
Well, the one thing that drove me back in the day, 2 years ago, nuts about Far From Home was it just doesn't feel like what Spider-Man is. And the thing that I found the most egregious is that in that sequence after he has the fight with Mysterio, with all the illusions, not hallucinations. And he gets hit by the train, he ends up somewhere in the Netherlands, and he's walking through the tulip field, and he calls up Jon Favreau. And he's like, "Jon Favreau, I'm scared and tired. Come pick me up." And then Deus Ex Machina plane shows up, and then and not just that a plane picks him up, he's then able to design a new suit on the plane while AC/DC is playing. And I'm just like,
well, that they're giving us Tony Stark Jr.
Well, sure,
yeah,
but that's fine. I don't disagree with that. Whatever. I'm sorry, you're right, but Peter Parker, and we talked about this a lot, in the Raimi episode, that Peter Parker is the kid from Queens who can't catch a break. And in this, he's in trouble, calls up his dead father figure's bodyguard, and it's like, "Come pick me up on the super spy plane." and like automatically like he's just rescued. And I'm like, wouldn't it have been great if we actually saw Peter Parker had to fight adversity in these movies? Or like, wouldn't it be great to see him like, and Zenger and I talked about this in this episode, like he has to like catch a train from like the Netherlands, and like we see a great sequence of him being like in this huge like train station somewhere like in Poland or maybe like Germany, and he's got to like swing from different tracks to tracks. And instead, we just literally have him call up Jon Favreau, and Jon Favreau gives him like a pep talk.
I'm with you,
I just
Zach.
found that so like that's not like I get it. They're doing their own thing with Spider-Man, like to each their own. But like that is not Spider-Man. There is no point that people, because I remember back when like this the oh god, the Sony hack with all their emails, and there's like a Kevin Feige like email of him like reading the Amazing Spider-Man 2 script, because there's a point where they explain that like Richard Parker like invented the spider's genetic code, so only Parker blood would be like able to get like these abilities. And in that, like, and this is from an actual like email that was like hacked leak, Kevin Feige says, who's again this person that the internet cannot stop sucking off, he's like, this is inherently unrelatable because it defeats the purpose of who Peter Parker is as a character and a person. And then you have this where like Peter Parker's in like a jam and he calls someone's bodyguard to come pick him up on a private plane. It's like, it just took me out of the movie, and I'm just like I can maybe I'm the asshole here because it's like, oh, he's a character that has all these fantastic powers. Why can't you accept this? I'm like, that's not what this character is. Like, that's not what Spider-Man is at his core. He that's the thing. He always has to figure things out through his wits. He can't just get like a get me out of jail free card, and that's what he does in both of these movies. Like even with the bodega owner in the first movie, where like he's partially responsible in that guy's establishment getting blown up, and like there's no consequences. Like that's one thing about these movies that kind of just frustrates me, is that Peter Parker has zero like consequences to his actions. He just kind of, and maybe that's what they're getting into with the post-credit scene of Far From Home, that like, oh, now that like J. Jonah Jameson has like blown the lid on like who he is, but that's weird that like it reminded me a lot, like rewatching it for this recording, it reminded me a lot of the Venom 2 post-credit scene, where like it felt like a movie that was just boilerplate to get to the post-credit scene. Where like that's where the dramatic weight was for the story going forward, which brings me back to a famous just point that Rob always brings up. It's the like TV show thing now, where like show starts, nothing happens, and then 30 seconds before commercial, something happens, and that just continues to happen until the very end, and it's like, okay, and then now watch the next episode. Like it's so serialized in the way that like, and I know I kind of just like verbally diarrheaed over the audience, but like yeah, those are two of my biggest things with this movie, where like it just like it felt so disingenuous at times and hollow.
Yeah, you did say a lot there, Zach. At the end, I'm glad you mentioned one of my favorite things to say. Movies and TV shows of the modern era have become old school arcade cabinets. People seem to forget this, but like Pac-Man and Galaga and like Mario and like way old arcade games, they were designed to make you so angry you don't think twice about putting the next quarter in. That was the entire premise of those games. That when you lose and you think it was, oh, that was fucked up, I shouldn't have got eaten by that ghost there, you're just going to put another quarter in without thinking. That's what these movies and TV shows have become. Hour-long TV shows where nothing happens for 59 minutes, but then that last minute, something is so wild you have to see the next episode. And that's also another form of Marvelitis, I think. But going back to something you said earlier, Zach, about the tech or the ways out that Spider-Man and Peter Parker has in these movies, I'm in total agreement with you. He is able to get out of some circumstances in true Deus Ex Machina form because he has a phone number, or he knows Iron Man in the first movie. That happens. But
and it's even worse because Happy historically never answers his calls.
Oh, okay. I don't think I knew that,
but it's in Homecoming. Like Happy, he's trying to call Happy all the time, and Happy never answers his calls.
Okay, sure. But do you think that was done? They gave Spider-Man an easy out for his battles, his actual physical battles, because they knew they needed more focus on the coming of age type of story. Like, Spider-Man can call Happy to pick him up on super secret spy jet when he's in Holland because he can, but he can't call Happy to figure out how to ask out the girl he likes type of thing. I think that this was an error of the movie trying to say, let's focus more on the human elements where he has to figure it out by his wit, as you said, and let's not make him do that with the fighting elements. Let's make him just have his ways out because they are so indebted to the MCU, which has all these connections already. What do you think?
I think it was a runtime issue.
This movie would have been like another hour long if he had to wit his way out of everything. You're right.
But this is the thing, though. Like, okay, but getting back to another sequence, where, like, another thing that just doesn't make sense about Marvel continuity, that, like, he gets the magic, like, glasses, and, like, okay, like, they're on the bus going from point A to B, and he's like, I want to know, like, there's the guy who takes a picture of him, like, in, like, the bathroom with, like the SHIELD agent, and he's like, I want to see what's on his phone, and it's like, and the glasses are like, what do you want to do, Peter? Target Brad. It's like targeting Brad, and we see like the Death Star up in like space, like launch like a drone, and like we have like a 5-minute sequence of like this drone trying to blow up the bus, and I'm just like, why did we need any of this? Like this feels so antithetical to what Spider-Man is, and then two, this goes back to like Marvel content.
That's kind of the point, though, isn't it? Like he very much did not actually want to target.
Sure, but like it's the idea, like it's so just it goes back to the technology thing. Where like, oh, it's a drone, and it's like, well, why is it a drone? Because drones are popular with the kids these days. Like, Rob, I didn't tell you this, but like in the JCPenney like parking lot, like that's abandoned, I saw a grown man playing with his drone like in the parking lot by himself. Like, and I swear they just do these things like in the Marvel things because like, oh, drones are a popular buzzword with the kids these days. We're gonna plug this element in. And getting back to like the point of like in the film is that like, oh, why? I think about it, the impetus for the entire Marvel thing is like Tony Stark is kidnapped and put into a cave, and then he's like, nope, I don't want to be an arms dealer anymore. Like this is a detriment to like not just my legacy but to mankind as a whole. And then we find out that like 11 years later, his company is still producing like technology that has like missiles and like all these weapons, and it's like, well, this doesn't make sense. And then like the whole idea that like I get it, like Ben, like it's that notion of okay, like oh, he made a mistake, now he has to clean up after it, but like it should be smaller scale than that. Like it should be like it just feels so like bloated. And that's the thing. Like Peter Parker is such a simplistic character. It should be downsized.
Well, one, the scene in Far From Home where he calls the drone strike on Brad and then has to stop the drone from attacking the bus, but probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in a movie, period. It was so unnecessary. Two, I think that the second movie would have been better served if Peter didn't know how strong the magic glasses were before he gave them to Mysterio. Like, I know what they're doing. Like, in the first movie, he gets the spider suit. Ned is a programming genius that figures out how to turn off the training wheels or whatever they're called, and he has to deal with learning this new tech. I'm fine with that. Spider-Man gets new tech, has to learn it. Okay, whatever. They do the same thing in the second movie. He gets new tech. He misuses it, has to learn how to use it. Wouldn't it have been more effective if he gets this new tech, doesn't really understand it, and then just says, it's like, oh, and then we just skip all that bus shit. We skip him knowing that it's this big defense system, and he gives it over to Mysterio and not really knowing what it is. So his error is twofold. It's not only giving it to a bad guy, the magic sunglasses, but also not understanding what Tony Stark gave him. I thought that it would have lent a character arc better, where Spider-Man goes, well, no, I have to trust the people, but I also have to understand the people that came before me. But instead, they go, oh, we did this in the first movie. He misuses tech from Tony Stark. Gotta have another scene of that. And I'm with you, Zach, it is wholly unnecessary.
Why would he give it away if he didn't understand what it was? Because like part of the reason he gives it away is that he feels like it's too big for him.
Maybe, but maybe that's all it should be. Maybe it shouldn't be him saying, oh, I accidentally almost killed one of my classmates. Maybe it should just be something with, like, the note that he gets from Tony Stark says, like, this is a global defense system that I'm leaving in your hands. Maybe overwhelm him with pressure or the prospect of pressure.
Well, given that situation with Brad, he still has no idea how powerful this thing is.
That's true. I guess what I'm saying is I want to remove that and make it more psychological, because the thing with Brad on the bus makes it tangible. He knows that this thing can do drones and can kill anybody he just gives the whim to. I would have kind of liked if he, after the first movie and after the events of Endgame, got these magic sunglasses and kind of went, maybe I should think about this more. Maybe Mr. Stark gave me this for a reason. Maybe I should be more hesitant with it. Because in the movie, he's just like, Brad's a target. Is Brad a target? Yeah, Brad's a target. Fuck his phone up, you know? And he's just very ready to use this new tech. And I think he should have learned that in the previous Marvel movies to be a little more hesitant with using this stuff, if that makes sense. Where he thinks Mysterio is more mature and understands what he's using, type of thing.
I mean, I guess I don't necessarily see the distinction in terms of him knowing what it is or not. It's like he can be told what it is or he can see it in action.
Okay, exactly right. I want it to be told. I don't want another goofy action scene that has nothing to do with the movie to tell us that.
Well, okay, that's fair, but I don't think that that's super related. I guess I don't see it as being related to whether or not he knows what it is.
That's fair. Well, I think we're getting to the same story point, just in slightly different ways. Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So he don't have the unrelated scene. Sure.
Exactly. Because I was so groaning, and yes, of course, this is a subjective thing, and this is I know some people probably love this scene, but him he goes, hey, look at the baby mountain goats. The whole bus looks away from him so he can jump up, shoot the drone, and jump back down. They go, there weren't any mountain goats, Peter Parker, you're stupid. And I was just like, I literally felt my retinas detach. My eyes rolled so hard during that scene. You know what I mean?
Well, sure, and yes, that was definitely not a thing that could ever happen, and not even a thing where you can be like, oh, I'm suspending my disbelief because I'm watching a superhero movie.
Yes.
It's just like, that was a stupid character thing.
Yeah. Remove the stupid character thing. Give me something more psychological that sets up the actual motion of the movie.
Well, and it could have even been that the thing that was going to happen to Brad was like nuclear on a different level. Like, it was going to out him to the whole class as somebody who takes pictures of people in the bathroom or something.
Sure.
As opposed to this, yeah, I'm with you. That could have been better.
So, anything else, Zach, Ben? I mean, like I said, I've exhausted my notes. Any other moments? I think we did all the characters, so.
I want No Way Home to be good. Please do not make this into just like more Tony Stark nonsense. Or is it the magical
Doctor Strange nonsense?
Yep. Zach, I kind of love the fact where I go, any final thoughts? And you go, please just let the next movie be enjoyable. I just want to see something that doesn't make me want to die.
That's exactly how I feel going into every movie now.
Yep.
It's sad when my favorite movie of the year is Malignant. That's sad.
That is very sad. You still got to watch the Nowhere Inn, I'm assuming, Zach. That's going to be your favorite movie of the year.
Oh, God. But no, I'm ready for questions.
Okay, Ben, if you're good with that too, okay, well, let's Ben's like, hell yeah. After a little over 3 hours, Ben's like, yeah, okay. I'll put the clip in right here. Ben, aren't you excited to know that the next 4 hours of your life are going to be spent answering questions? So, I think that this is the one time in this series where my question actually comes into play. Are we separating these or keeping them together? Because for the previous 2 weeks, we kind of lumped them all together. We might have had caveats for specific things like Spider-Man 3 and stuff like that, but I kind of wanted to pick your guys' brain. I don't think these movies can be lumped together. I see them as cogs in the wheel of the MCU rather than I do as an actual Spider-Man series. What do you guys think?
I try not to anymore.
Okay. But Ben, can you suspend your knowledge of the MCU strong enough to see these as direct, like as Far From Home as a direct sequel to Homecoming? Because in all the other last 2 weeks, we had direct sequels. Like Spider-Man 2 was directly tied. Yeah, go for it.
In that sense, no.
It's impossible,
it is not,
right?
It's not a direct sequel. That's just not what it is.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying I think these need to be separated. I don't think there's really a way to lump these together, especially when we talk about like late night. Like, if you did a double feature of these two movies, like, you would have to inherently rely on the other person or the other people knowing what happened in between the two of them. right? I don't know, Zach. I
Right.
wanted to know what you thought on this too.
Oh, Steve, join them together.
No,
oh, God.
Everything I just said was how we can't join them together.
Rob, it's the same goddamn movie. It's all part of this nonsense. There's like 85 Marvel movies. All of it's together now.
I was actually a little confused by your point as well, Rob, because you were like, these are just cogs in the MCU machine.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that leads me to believe that they should be joined together because they're just...
Oh, well, no. If we join these together, we would have to answer our questions about every single Marvel movie. If we join these two, we join all of them, right?
Okay, I guess I understand.
No to late night movie, no to Cinemati. Moving on, snacks.
I guess I should also say that this question, as much as I love to ask it, doesn't really make much of a difference on my end because I have no across the board for all of these. But Ben, what do you think?
I mean, I enjoy both of them. If I'm talking to a Spider-Man fan or somebody who likes MCU shit, sure, watch them. If I'm talking to somebody who wants to watch a film, no.
Okay. I think you've kind of said that in the last 2 weeks as well, that like the late night movies for you, the Spider-Man fan, is like, yeah, if I got a Spider-Man fan, let's do it. Is that right?
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, sure, it's Spider-Man. Like it doesn't matter if it's the best Spider-Man. It's still Spider-Man on the big screen.
Perfect.
And that's, I'm sure that they could do something that would make me eat those words, but so far they have not. So
okay, and I think for cinemodities for these two, I think are you in agreement? Zach and I both said no for them. What do you think about?
Oh yeah, I mean they're fucking cookie cutter Marvel movies. How could they be odd?
Yeah, that's kind of also what I was getting at. Like these being cogs in the MCU machine kind of precludes them from being odd in any way. At least, especially with how late in the game. Like what, movie 16 and movie 23 or whatever I said before. So I'm with you. Wow, we're all in agreement. That usually does not happen. But that brings us to the restaurant. That brings us to snacks. And I think I'm going to jump on this one. I don't know if you guys saw it in your research, but to promote Spider-Man Homecoming, a Spider-Man-themed cafe opened in Tokyo, specifically in the Roppongi Hills, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, please, Roppongi Hills, come on this podcast and tell us how to say your name. But the press release said this cafe, promoting Homecoming, specifically Homecoming, had, quote, arachnid-themed foods and drinks, including a spider curry, a spider sense latte, and a sweet and refreshing strawberry spider squash drink. So when I read this, I had to dive into it some more, and the press release actually has some pictures that you can find. The curry looks like a basic curry, except there's a cracker on top of it, which might not be a cracker. It might be some other food. It just looks like a cracker, but it has the Spider-Man's, like, mask design on it, so like the webbed face type of thing. The latte is a regular coffee cup, but it has the spider web design on the top of it. And the drink looks like a stock footage image of a pink drink. There's nothing special about the strawberry spider squash drink. I also was able to find a picture of the cafe's interior, and it is sad as shit, guys. It is a regular cafe, and they just put decals of Spider-Man on the walls. Like, it is one of the most depressing things I've ever seen. So I figured
Are you telling me there's no actual spiders in any of the food?
No, it's regular food. It's 2D printouts of Spider-Man. I couldn't even fucking find if they had a Spider-Man walk-around character. So in every way, shape, and form, this restaurant is inferior to the Cinemodities restaurant. And my first pitch for our restaurant was, let's just absorb this into us, you know? Like, let's start putting spiders into food. Let's make these things more of what they should be. I think getting at what you were saying, Ben. What do you think about that?
I'm all for it. There should have been actual spiders in their food.
I know, right?
I thought you were going to tell me that they put this in a locale where spiders were some kind of delicacy, and they were serving actual spiders.
I wish, Ben. I fucking wish. But this is the most basic, bland type of pop-up Spider-Man restaurant I've ever fucking seen, and it's depressing. So let's absorb it and make it even better.
I'm on board.
Okay, another one I have to throw out here because this was the biggest takeaway I got from these movies. In Homecoming, there is a scene, I don't remember exactly where, because this is a different part of my notes, so I don't have my timing right, but Aunt May and Peter Parker are at a restaurant, and Aunt May keeps saying the word larb.
Larb, yeah.
My note was...
What's the matter? Thought you loved larb. It's too larby? Not larby enough. How many times do I have to say larb before you talk to me? You know I larb you.
My literal note is, what the fuck is larb? Aunt May keeps saying larb in one scene. This is legitimately something I have never known. Larb is the national dish of Laos, which is a meat/veggie salad that is a very specific, kind of construction and presentation. Larb is an actual food. I don't know about you guys, I'm just excited that I've gone this many years in my life, and I get to learn something new today from watching a stupid fucking Spider-Man movie. I don't know, did you guys know that larb is an actual thing?
I figured it was because of the whole shawarma thing.
Oh
gosh, shawarma.
I did not think about that, Ben, but you're absolutely right. With them, they're like, oh my god, the whole Avengers doing one funny word with shawarma. They were like, what's another funny word for food or something? I didn't think about that at all, Ben. That makes me more upset, though, about this scene.
Yeah.
But larb. I mean, larb is a real dish, so let's do it. Let's add the actual dish of larb to our restaurant menu. Because, and maybe it says, it's just called larb on the menu, and then the subtitle that where it usually would say the ingredients or something just says, Rob did not know what this was until he was 29, or something like that, Never heard of larb. What do you guys got? Any snacks from these movies? I only have one more, and it's not really a snack, so what do you guys got?
Zach, I'll let you take this one away. See if you got anything good.
Oh god, snacks in this. And we should have different characters come out on stage, just awkwardly be there to fundraise for us.
Okay.
like fundraisers. We should have fundraisers at the Cinemati's restaurant.
Would they be our walk around characters or actual cameos from outside sources?
I don't know. A little bit of both. We can get the high profile person, let's go for it, but we can always settle for the non the good
What do
person
you
we have in
mean?
the restaurant.
What do you mean get? We're gonna steal every intellectual property.
No, we're trying to get celebrities though, Ben. We're again, any good fundraising there, you need to have someone there that people want to press the flesh with. So we're gonna try to get them, but if not, we can always have one of our hokey facsimiles.
Okay.
I like that, Ben.
Hokey
I like that.
facsimile being the cornerstone of the Cinemati's restaurant.
Yeah. Makes me, isn't there, oh god, I'm not going to remember it. There's some famous story where Al Capone kidnapped Fats Waller, the jazz player, and he thought, Fats Waller thought he was going to be dead. He thought he did something wrong and pissed off the wrong people. But it turns out Al Capone or his people kidnapped him just to play the piano for a night at their club. And Fats Waller was found 2 days later, super fucking drunk off his ass with $50,000 in tips or something like that from Al Capone. I hope the Cinemati's restaurant can accomplish something like that, where we kidnap, I don't know, Katy Perry and make her perform for a night,
I'm on board for that. But yeah, I think we should do fundraising. Because other than that, I feel like there's something also with the invisible plane or the not invisible. It's not invisible.
Reflective or something, it seems, right?
Yeah. I like the idea of having a plane that's also automated, yet it needs someone to sign off on it, leaving the tower.
Sure.
I like that too. I want us to have automation, but it needs to be monitored by individuals at any given time.
Traffic control. Oh, this is traffic control. Airplane 38, you are cleared for takeoff. Beep, beep, beep. That type of thing. No human response or anything.
Pretty much. Something that's redundant.
Sure. Can we just say, because we didn't mention it, the heist of Vulture at the end of the first movie is kind of fucking bonkers. Him using the Vulture suit as a vacuum seal so he can break into the plane without changing pressure. I think you said it, Zach. Those last 30 minutes, that's some fun Spider-Man story type of stuff.
Exactly. The last 30 minutes of Homecoming's everything I want out of a Spider-Man story. And it happens we have the plane crashes not on the beaches of Coney Island.
Yeah.
And we have this awkward oh god, oh god, reverse establishing shot where at the very end we see the roller coaster brand type
the cyclone.
Marquee.
Yeah, we see the cyclone. Yep.
But it's at the end of the sequence, not at the beginning, which is so strange to have oh god, what would you call it? A reverse establishing shot?
Yeah. It's hey, you just saw that plane crash? Now guess what? It was at Coney Island. And it's just okay, whatever. Any other snacks from you guys? I got one more, like I said. Any more?
I think that we need to have a part of the restaurant where you can experience what it is to swing on a web like Spider-Man. We're going to give you a web shooter, and then we're going to let you swing face first into a building.
Ben, I'm very happy that you've pitched this, because without having the spreadsheet up right now, I am fairly certain that you pitched something very similar 2 weeks ago. But that time you said, we want to give people spider powers so they have to climb up a wall on their fingertips because I think that's going to break their wrist. I'm pretty sure that's what you said 2 weeks ago. So you're adding a new layer, the Spider-Man experience, either going to break your wrist or your entire face.
Definitely.
Nice.
That sounds like me. I can neither confirm nor deny that I said that.
Yeah.
I think that we should also have an attraction where you can experience a bunch of illusions and then get hit by a train.
Ooh, that's a good one. And that actually, I'm glad you bring it up. I knew somebody was going to. That's my last one. We need some illusion drones and illusion technology in our restaurant. And I love that idea, Ben, that, yeah, maybe if we have a bad customer, we can illusion them into walking into a train. But I was also thinking, like, what if somebody comes into the restaurant and they order something that we actually don't have? Like, maybe we're out of stock or something like that. Or we don't remember how to make it, because that happens all the time. So I was thinking we use this illusion technology that when a customer they order something that we don't have in stock or we don't know how to make or whatever, we create the illusion that they're actually eating it. And of course, like we were saying before, with the damage done to the surroundings during the illusions, we're going to need some of our drones to actually, like, you know, create this illusion for people. So I kind of love the idea that somebody might be sitting at a table thinking that they're eating, you know, a steak, but they're actually just hallucinating or being illusioned, or whatever the right phrase is, that they're eating a steak, and this drone is shoveling, like, gruel into their mouth. And here's the other thing. Everybody else at the restaurant can see that they're being fed gruel by a drone. Only the customer is in the illusion. I thought that would be cool.
Rob, isn't this the plot to next month's series with Joey Pants?
Kind of, but not really, because we're not trying to keep people in our restaurant for energy. Yet. That might change in a few weeks.
Tuning a month from now in the Matrix Revolutions episode on Cinemati's.
But I also love the idea that we can play with this in any way, you know, like we could make people think they're in a different part of the restaurant than they actually are, you know. We could fuck with people. People who've been trapped in there for years. We could make them think they're near the exit and then they get hit by a train or something like that.
I mean, and if we can, we might have to send out people to do research, but we could, like, give people illusions that they're actually back at home.
Ooh, I like
really
that.
Start to psychologically torture people.
Yeah, they come into the Cinemati's restaurant, they have their meal, they pay. Before they leave, we hallucinate or make them believe that they went back home, and then we start to, like, incept them with the idea that they have to go back to the Cinemati's restaurant when they've really been there the whole time.
But in reality, they are looks directly into the lens. Far from home.
Yeah, so I'm that was good, Zach. I'm definitely here for that. And I think we do, you know, we'll experiment with it, see what really works for some people, but, like, do some things where it's like we make them think they need to come back to the restaurant, do other things where it's like they slowly realize they're still at the restaurant, and do other things where we make them think that their house is haunted and shit. Like, just fucking run with it, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, Ben, I love that idea. I want somebody who's in the restaurant thinking they're at their own home and they think they're microwaving something, but when they open the microwave, just like a ton of cigarettes fall out. You know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. That's a perfect usage of it.
Yeah, okay. Right on. That just illusion drones and technology was my last snack. Any others from you guys, or any more continuations on the illusion drone, which I'm sure will come up a lot more, because that's a very versatile thing we have now.
I mean, we could also just get a mannequin of Zendaya and convince everybody it's actually Zendaya.
I love the idea of having a mannequin Zendaya, or let's go with the, like, Madame Tussauds wax sculpture of Zendaya, and everybody's looks so real, and it's like, no, that's her. She's just hibernating right now.
May I take it one step further
Okay.
and, like, regress it? Can we get a cardboard cutout of Zendaya?
And everybody's like, is this actually Zendaya? And it's like, yeah, she's always been a two-dimensional figure. And be like, I've seen her in movies. She looks 3D. And that's a trick of the light. That's movie magic right there.
Exactly. No, we could go the other way and actually have the real Zendaya and try to convince people it's a mannequin.
Imagine that conversation, like, Zendaya, we want you in our restaurant for a night. What do I have to do? Just stand there.
Just do whatever you did in Homecoming.
Yeah, remember that performance? Channel that again.
Right.
Okay, right on. If there's nothing else, that brings us to the end. So, we finished our main Spider-Man franchise series. Next 2 weeks, we're going to be diving into the villains. So next week is going to be the Venoms, those 2 movies. And then we are still up in the air what the hell we're doing for the last episode. It's going to be some animated Spider-Man, but we'll figure out whenever we figure that out, I guess is the best way to say it. So, what do we say at the end of this? What do we got to pitch? Patreon. Let's do that, Ben. Patreon, come listen to it. It's great stuff. Bonus content, supporting the podcast. God, I don't remember when this is coming out. I think the last thing... shit, look at that. This is coming out the same day that the first episode of us discussing the second season of Adventure Time comes out on Patreon, Ben. So this is a grand event. So if you are into what we've discussed here, if you like Adventure Time, head on over to the Patreon because we have some great discussions about that. Anything you want to say about the Patreon, Ben? Any pitch you want to put out there?
We love your support, and if you don't already support us, you should stop doing that and start supporting us.
Perfect. I think other than that, as always, I think our audience has heard it in this series, Ben, but I've used your Magic the Gathering Life Counter app. It is very efficient, albeit a little cluttered, which I think you fixed, you said 2 weeks ago. So I will put those links in there, and everybody should check that out if you are playing that game.
Definitely. Definitely check out the Life Counter. I'm also selling some cards on TCG Player. Not that is...
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you're buying cards on TCG Player, you know how to use it, and you're not trying to find it by seller. But if you do happen to order from me, I am including custom Rocket Bear tokens, which are also business cards that you can show off that you bought cards from me. And also, I guess if you just want some custom Rocket Bear tokens, you should probably get in contact with us through the email and hit me up, and I'll see what I can do about it.
Yeah, all those links will be in the show notes appropriately. Zach, what do you got to pitch? What do you want to say about the Patreon, Zach? I love asking you this question.
Oh, God. I'm trying to pitch Ben Rob on a special tier of the podcast for a very special listener. Hopefully by 6 to 7 months from now, I will be able to get that done. If you ever want to hear me, if you ever want to hear me on the Patreon, subscribe to that tier when we eventually get to it.
Oh, Zach, don't be so modest. We're probably going to put you on a Spider-Man episode on the Patreon.
Oh God, no! I'm only on the Nicole tier. Yeah, you have to earn me. Like I am a like top shelf whore. Like you gotta pay the big dollars to get me.
That is the $200 a month tier that he's referring to. So
Yes.
For all those people that are considering that.
And I'm glad you brought it up, Zach. The very special person who you also said was Nicole. I just want to say, we don't even need to get into it. I just want to have it somewhere in an episode. Nicole, are you getting my emails? Are you reading my emails? Seems like you aren't. Let's see if we hear back. Let's see how that goes in a non-email form of communication. Well, with all that out of the way, thank you for listening. If you want to check out the Patreon, link will be in the show notes. Definitely support the podcast. You get more episodes. If you want to harass us through email, cinemoddities@gmail.com. And as always, check out the Cinemoddities subreddit, reddit.com/r/cinemoddities for more information about the show and to see what other people, how they're thinking about this Spider-Man series. I think that's the last post that was in there. I guess that leaves us with how do we end this episode? And guys, I'm kind of torn. I know this is, you've all been mulling this over while we've been discussing this, of course, but there were 2 needle drops in Spider-Man Homecoming that I kind of still haven't figured out which one I'm going to get. No, not the credits, actually. Needle drops in the movie. At one point, we hear an instrumental version of Spoon's The Underdog. And of course, I don't even think I need to say this, but the song The Underdog from Spoon is off their album Ga 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 Ga. That is a fact. But we also get a needle drop in the first movie from Save It for Later by The Beat, who in America you might know as the English Beat if you were alive in the 80s, or in the teenager in the 80s. I don't know which one I want to use, guys. Should I do a medley again? Were there any other songs I'm missing? We're not using Back in Black by Led Zeppelin, because that's a joke in the second movie. I don't know. Any thoughts on how do we end this episode, or are you just going to throw it over to me with my medley again?
I think you need to sing that Nightmare Before Christmas thing again.
Should our outro just become me singing Sally's song every time?
That's right. No, I'm happy to let you pick the music, Rob. I know that matters to
Zach,
you.
what were you saying with the end credits? I didn't even write down any.
Vacation's all I ever wanted.
I don't know. No, I don't like
Oh,
that
wait, hold
one.
on. Was Kids in America in one of these movies?
Honestly, if you asked me that as a trivia night, I would say yes, because that's my guess, but I don't know for sure.
I have heard that song very recently.
It sounds like it would fit in this film, absolutely.
And these are the things I watched most recently, which makes me think. No, when I search this, what I'm getting is that Tom Holland dressed up as Spider-Man and visited kids at hospitals. So
cool. I'll play that in reverse. Tom Holland's Make-A-Wish appearances. There we go.
Perfect.